Mr. William Brown, welcome to New Jersey.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. Big fan of the pod.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, brother. It's also like shocking you haven't done 1 million pods already. Your channel's great.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I've kind of just been growing here and there, putting out some content lately. Lately, I've been doing these AI videos with the Conquistadors, retelling the history of that first contact moment. But for the last few years, I've been chasing mysteries down in South America, North America.
Yeah, you've been on the ground, you were telling me.
Yep, on the
Love
ground.
it.
And kind of got a smorgasbord worth of stuff we can talk about today. So excited to be here.
Of course, there's a lot on the bone for sure. But what was really cool is, like, first of all, you're living down in Puerto Rico right now. How'd you end up down there? I heard amazing things about it.
Grew up in Kansas, landlocked state, and decided I needed to be near an ocean. I love Latin America. Got easy access to South America down there. And so I've been over there for going on like 1.5 years now. So Puerto Rico's home now. I love it.
That's awesome. Where are you in Puerto Rico?
San Juan.
So you were telling me, though, that the west coast of Puerto Rico is like a pretty well-kept secret?
Yeah, West Coast. I don't know if it's too much secret. Like, it's Rincon is where a lot of the Puerto Ricans go and vacation. They call it Rincon. There's a lot of gringos that live there. So, but that's the surf capital of the Caribbean. Big waves, like big swells out there on the northwest side right there. It's kind of a cool area because you got the northwest side is huge waves, like pipeline level waves during certain seasons. And then you just go around the corner of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's a small island.
Yeah. And
those waves calm down. And so you got these, flat, water where you can see islands out there for miles. Yep.
It's beautiful. Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below.
I love Puerto Rico. Shout out to Puerto Rico and everybody there. My Spanish, it's getting a little better. It's a little rough.
Oh, you're still not fluent in it?
You're not fluent, but...
Did you know any before you went down there?
Yeah, I've been traveling around Mexico and South America for 4 years, but food and like drinks, no problem, man. Like my like number one interaction in Spanish is always ordering in restaurants. So, but Puerto Rican Spanish is really fast.
Yeah.
Muy rápido. And so I have to ask them to slow down. But they also speak a little bit of Spanglish over there. Like these are all American citizens. Yeah, right. So there's a little bit of a blend. But I love it down there.
That's our 51st state.
Hey, it's a
Everyone
big
says
push
Greenland,
for that.
but
right.
I feel like Puerto Rico's got the inside track there. No.
Well, Puerto Ricans, they've been Americans. They've had American passports. They've served in the military for a long time now. So it's definitely its own vibe there, separate from there. I feel like Puerto Ricans first and foremost, like where their pride is, kind of like a Texan, maybe. But like 4th of July, it was hopping. They were celebrating.
Love that.
Cool. Yeah.
American patriotism down there.
Absolutely.
It's a little warmer down there right now too.
It's nice. That was quite the difference when I landed here. I got this hoodie. That's all I brought. And it was cold, man.
I would have told you, pack a jacket.
It was cold.
We just had like one of the more historically cold like week and a halves we've had in a long time. I'd be walking to the gym in the morning and it would say like the temperature is 3 and with a wind chill of -13. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be awake when I get in there.
Yeah, for sure. You don't need to do the cold plunge after the sauna. You just walk outside. Yeah.
We don't have to do it artificially.
There you go.
We got it.
Exactly.
It's in our bones. But like I was saying, you got a great channel. You were shouted out by Michael Button when he was in here. And you and I have a close mutual friend as well in Luke Caverns.
Yes.
Who speaks really highly of your work. But you do a lot of different types of topics. And I, for one, you referenced it. I don't know if we were on camera yet when you did, but you referenced, some of the AI storytelling as well. I really like how when you did, for example, the history of the Aztecs, which we'll talk about today because you did an amazing job with that, but like you were creating like AI to create the scenes and everything. And like, to me, that's a good use of AI because we don't have like footage from, 1500 and shit like that to be able to tell historically in a documentary format on YouTube, here's what's happening, and to be able to kind of show people what that might look like. Really, really good stuff, man.
Appreciate that. So a lot of people, we're still getting used to this idea of using AI for whether it's B footage or just a full-on documentary. And for me, it wasn't even necessarily, I don't even call it a documentary. I kind of just call it a Spanish versus Aztec video. There are things happening with AI that are going to allow people like me with a history teacher budget to do things that Hollywood it would take $10 million to do several years ago. I'm not saying we're there yet or that I'm there yet, but that's why I'm getting interested in it. A lot of people talk about AI slop, and that's true. There is a lot of AI slop out there. I'm guilty of some AI slop. But my goal is to keep getting better at it because I promise it's rapidly developing. And I think history is a really good way to use it. In particular, because Hollywood doesn't ever do anything with the conquistadors.
Yes.
It's a very I don't want to say it's a taboo subject. It's a very sensitive subject. And for me, I'm ready to make it. I think the Spanish versus Aztec story is probably the most underrated story that Hollywood has never really touched before.
Why?
That moment of first contact where two worlds are colliding. We have documentation of it. The Spanish wrote a lot of things down, and I got some stuff to talk about with that too, because a lot of people say they were lying and embellishing. I'm sure there's some of that, but I got some stuff to say about that later too. But they've never made a Hollywood movie about it.
Why? That's what I want to know. Why do you think it's so taboo for them to do that? And I say this as someone who, even though this isn't the exact topic, it was technically something fictionalized right before.
Yep.
I say this as someone who, one of my favorite movies ever is Apocalypto.
Yeah.
Which is like cinematically beautiful and tells an amazing story. You know what I mean? And people really, especially over time, that has aged so well. So why don't they go make something like on that time period with the Aztecs?
It's pretty fresh, and I think it's a little too soon maybe for a place that's too like kind of politically correct like Hollywood. And 500 years, there's still a lot that is developed since. And I'm kind of joking when I say it's too soon. Like it's been 500 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to touch because one of the reasons it's done so well, my video on Facebook, it's gotten millions and millions of views. I got 17 million views on Facebook in December just from reposting clips of all of this stuff.
You got to teach us. I'm not even on Facebook.
Facebook's where it's at. We can talk after this.
Yes, please.
The boomers, shout out to the boomers. They will sit down and watch a video, and they're all on Facebook. So definitely get on there. And Facebook's monetized as well.
If you know how to do, I'm dead serious. Yeah. If you know how to do it and want to talk to me about that and want to just take a cut and do it.
I know. Hey, I'll do it for free. I got Michael Button on it. And he's cooking on there now too. But my point is, one of the reasons it gets so many views and so many people care about it is because, number one, it's a badass story. Like, it's the craziest story of all time, and we can talk about some of that. We're going to. And then number two, it's a very controversial story. You should see the comments in some of those Facebook posts, man. You got one side accusing me of being a Spanish, apologist. You got another side accusing me of being an Aztec apologist.
That means you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to. I'm not saying I'm getting everything right, but I don't hide the fact that in these videos, these conquistador videos, my primary sources are the Spanish. There are some pretty good sources for the other side of the story as well. Like Broken Arrows is a really good book that tells the Aztec side of the story.
Broken Arrows?
Broken Arrows.
Can we pull that up, Steve?
And, but one of my more controversial takes on this, and I'll get grilled for this, is anytime people talk about the Spanish and the Aztec, a lot of times even academics will preface it with, well, the Spanish, they were probably embellishing and they were probably lying about a lot of stuff. And hey, the victors write the history books.
Yes.
I have never seen any evidence that shows that the Spanish were any different than the Romans or anyone else in history. That's one big conquest. Of course, that's going to happen. But with the Spanish, what's interesting, and one thing why I take a lot of what they say seriously, is there's 3 reasons here. They had their main religion, their religion was Catholicism, right? But they kind of had this secondary religion going on with the crown. So as much as they were, devout Catholics, their other thing that they were very devout with was the authority of the crown. And anytime they're writing something in history, especially Hernan Cortés and some of these early conquistadors, that is an official letter to the crown. And the conquistadors, like anyone in human history, especially back then, and well now too, they would be quick. I don't want to say backstab, but if somebody was sniffing out a lie, they're gonna rat on each other. I think so. I'm not saying that they didn't embellish. I'm sure they did, but it's the best primary source we have for what happened then. And I decided to go read those primary sources and start making videos about them. So
That's all. So you've read all this stuff.
a lot of it. Yeah. So a really good website is Project Gutenberg.
Project Gutenberg.
Amazing. This site right here they're basically their goal. I think it's I don't think it's for profit. This site right here uploads all of, I don't know if this is it right here. I think that's probably it. Yeah. Yeah, so 75,000 free ebooks. All of these are a lot of these are primary sources from the 1500s, 1600s. They're basically trying to scan as many sources as they can to put up on the internet. Another one is wiki sources, where you just get their words, how they were. Hernan Cortez's letter to the king. Bernal Diaz, who was one of the conquistadors that took part of the Aztec and Spanish. They have all of his work that you can read for free, and all of it's copyright free at this point. They've been dead for 500 years. So,
do you ever have run into any issues with interpretations of what they're saying because they spoke differently when they wrote?
And that's one thing to keep in mind. A lot of these people that translated these, and there's something called the Black Legend, I think is what it's called, and so a lot of the translations were done by English Anglo scholars. And so a lot of these Spaniards that are historians have problems with some of their interpretations. They think it tries to make the conquistadors sound a little worse than they were. But definitely a lot has changed linguistically since then, especially writing styles. And there's probably only a handful of people these days that could actually tell you exactly what they were writing. But fortunately, back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, a lot of people were translating these writings into English. And
over the past couple years, my dad has been complaining about the fact that he's working out just as much as he always has. He's eating mostly the same stuff, but the fat around his stomach seems to just stick around and his energy is lower. A lot of people think that the classic dad bod just comes from drinking more beer or eating worse. For a lot of guys, though, that's not the whole story. As men get older, our bodies reprogram themselves, so they naturally start storing more fat and losing muscle more easily. And the main reason for this is testosterone. Most men's T levels start dropping somewhere in their 30s. When that happens, it becomes easier to gain fat, especially around your stomach. And the worst part is, the more body fat you gain, the more your body actually converts testosterone into estrogen, which makes it even easier to gain more fat. So at the end of the day, it just becomes a really tough cycle. But that's why my dad started using Marsmen. Marsmen is a natural supplement designed to support healthy testosterone levels, which can help your body burn fat more efficiently and build more lean muscle. When your hormones are working the way they're supposed to, a lot of things get easier. Marsmen can help your body get back to running like it did years ago. And they're doing it with real natural ingredients, not weird stimulants or synthetic hormones. We're talking about a legit quality product made in the USA that has every batch third-party tested. My dad's noticed his recovery from his workouts is way better. He has less cravings throughout the day, and he's down about 5-6 pounds since using Marsmen. Right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 50% off For life. That's right, for life. Plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That's mengotomars.com. Link in my description below for 50% off and 3 free gifts when you check out. And it's also available on Amazon. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them I sent you.
So once again, it's kind of the best we got. And that you can say the same thing for any period of history.
Yep, absolutely. And you make a really good point about any empire or kingdom or insert term like that here throughout history. Yes, it's always written by the victors, and in some cases it's really slanted the wrong way, and in other cases it's not, and it's up to interpretation. But like, to me, one of the tragedies of the 0 to 100 internet culture we live in is exactly what the title there is. People either got to be 0 or 100 on something, meaning, I've used this example a lot, but like, I studied the shit out of the Revolutionary War.
Yep.
Loved the Revolutionary War. Loved the guys that did it. Incredible work.
Yep.
They were still imperfect men, right?
100%.
So you can find things, sometimes, by the way, things that actually even are written in the history books that just don't get mentioned in the documentaries and the summaries and stuff, where it's like, yeah, that was kind of fucked up.
Yep.
Like, we did it, you
Totally.
know, not the British. Meaning you could find that 10, 15% that's like a little different than the story they're going to tell you at the U.S. Constitution Center. Does that mean that you should therefore turn that 10 to 15% into 100 and say, you know what? Actually, the revolutionaries were the bad guys. I wish the fucking British won the war.
Yeah.
No, you know?
For sure. And for me, I just want to tell the story.
Yes.
So let's give their story a ride here, basically. And on that note, too, the Spanish in their writings didn't hide their sins. They describe their massacres. They describe a lot of the things that, you know, did not age well throughout history.
Did they justify it?
They would try to justify it, but they would talk about like the Cholula massacre. Have you ever heard of the massacre at Cholula?
Actually, yes, but please explain this.
So as Hernan Cortés has already landed with his men, they are trying to get to the Aztec capital, right? So it looks like we maybe got it pulled up here. They eventually get to Cholula, which is in modern day Puebla, Mexico. I've been there 3 times now. By the way, it's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I'm pretty sure it's the largest pyramid by volume in the world.
I think Luke was talking about this.
Yeah.
Or Michael, one of them was talking about this. I think you're right.
And he had his Tlaxcalan allies. So that's the other part of this. He had his Tlaxcalan allies with them who were arch enemies of the Cholulans, who, by the way, the Cholulans are part of like the Aztec Empire. And the Tlaxcalans are ready to tee off. These guys are not friendly with the Cholulans. And so basically Hernan Cortés, or Bernal Diaz, I think in this case, writes about how Hernan Cortés brings all the priests and the Cholulan hierarchy into this square, gives this speech about how they've all betrayed Montezuma, the king, and now they all must die. And then in come the Tlaxcalans, and it's just this massacre that happens. I think over 5,000 people were probably killed, all in one go.
They like sliced their heads off.
Just
kind
started
of deal?
At that point. Once the Tlaxcalans came in, there was not much the 500 Spaniards could do to stop what was going to happen next. I think women, children, and they write about it. And
the massacre of Cholula was an attack carried out by the military forces of Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortés on his way to the city of Mexico, Tenochtitlán, in 1519. Francisco López de Gomara indicates that the massacre of Cholula began after Cortés captured and killed Choluteca leaders, unleashing with this act the slaughter of 6,000 people in less than 2 hours. According to his letters of relationship, Cortés affirms that he made this decision as a here you go. You nailed it. As a preventative action before a possible ambush by 20,000 Mexican soldiers. However, the accounts collected by Bernardino de Sahugun contradict this version, since it is narrated that only unarmed Cholutec civilians were killed.
Yeah, so there you go. And so he's definitely trying to justify it.
Yeah.
Right? And, regardless, 6,000 people end up slaughtered. So It's, and they had to admit that there wasn't any escaping that. He knew he had to get ahead of that. So he starts writing this letter to the king. And and there's so many more examples of that throughout history, down in the, at this place in Cajamarca, Peru, with the conquest of the Inca. Pizarro and Hernando de Soto were responsible for a massacre that killed about the same amount of people in Cajamarca.
Yeah.
Not one Spaniard died. They went and basically kidnapped. Yep, here you go, right here. That's a crazy painting right there.
I remember Luke talked about that in episode 175 back in the day.
That's the King Atahualpa, and they took him prisoner. I believe it's estimated. You can see what they say. I think it's like 5,000 people possibly died, maybe more. Not one Spaniard died, and they caught them by surprise.
We live in this era, Will, of Starlink and places that were previously totally remote and inaccessible technically are also, if given the right resources, accessible at the click of a button. And yet, when I was out in the middle of the Amazon visiting Paul Rosalie back in 2024,
he's a cool guy. I don't know him personally, but I love his stuff. Sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. But I could not help but think we were 100 miles past, the most localized version of law enforcement, let alone military or anything like that. And in this era, at that time, 2024, if shit happened out there, no one knows. Nope. No one's going to find out or whatever. Now think about 500 years ago to where, you had to send a fucking carrier pigeon across on 3 different boats. Hopefully 2 of them actually make it with the message to get there 3 months later and tell the government like what happened.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want to say, and by the time they even find out about it, let alone make a decision,
right,
you're already fucking 600 miles east of there, already done it 3 more times over.
Yeah, exactly. Did Luke talk to you about the discovery of the Amazon? I put in quotations because this is the
Francisco
discovery.
de Orellana?
Yeah. This is the discovery by the conquistadors. There was an entire civilization living there.
Yeah, before we get to Cortés, can you explain what you mean by the entire civilization living there who obviously discovered it?
Yeah, so and Graham Hancock's really put a lot of this out there. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm sorry, I don't know the archaeologists' names that have been working with the LIDAR down there, but they're finding huge settlements along the Amazon River. But one of the Pizarro brothers decided to go look for cinnamon. They were always looking for gold, but cinnamon and spices was, the real cash crop out there. And there was this idea that the city of gold and cinnamon was they call it, the place of La Canela, was going to be found up northeast. So they start going on this expedition with a guy that you mentioned earlier, Orellana. And at some point, there's a friar with them named Gaspar de Carvajal.
Yes.
Gaspar de Carvajal and Orellana, their men, they start dying of hunger. They've ate their horses. All the pigs are gone. And so Pizarro stays behind. They volunteer to go down the river just to go look for food, and quickly found out they weren't turning back. There was going to be no turning back. And along the way, they document what they describe as like an organized civilization with these gigantic wooden pillars that are carved intricately. I believe they're seeing mounds. If you see like the mound builders out in the eastern part of the United States, I think a lot of the structures likely look like that. And we're seeing that today with the LIDAR imagery. But yeah, there's some crazy stories from that, a lot of massacres. But they were finding, basically the way they sustained themselves was they'd go raid these native villages for their turtles. These natives were like, one of their main sources of protein was river turtles, like these gigantic Amazon river turtles. And when they'd go in there, they'd have like, I guess you could call it domestic. And I'm not saying they were domesticated turtles, but they'd have like these entire pens full of turtles that they would raid, and some fish as well. So they had a whole system out there. And, I think I don't know the exact number of people that were living in there. That's not like, Luke could tell you a lot more about that, but that's one of my favorite stories because these people, these conquistadors, basically have to build their boat several times, rebuild their boat several times. They have to, you know, get as much metal as they possibly can and melt it down to create nails. And they end up sailing back to Spain with these boats. I think eventually they get to like the northern coast of Venezuela at some point, but it's a crazy survival story, and really only for a few. I think like 90% of that expedition died. And then Oriana comes back, you know, which is just crazy to me. You survived once, he comes back, and then he dies of fever on the second round in the Amazon. So yeah, pretty rough.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so hard to even try to imagine what it's like to go to an entirely new world.
Yeah.
And then chart down something as treacherous as the Amazon River across an entire continent.
Yep.
And just everything around you could kill you.
Yeah. There's one crazy story from there. There was this conquistador, unnamed. They just talk about one of the soldiers. He aimed his crossbow at a bird. He was wanting to hunt a bird. And while he was about to shoot, the like nut of the crossbow falls off and goes into the water. And then an hour later, they catch a fish, a catfish. And supposedly the nut was in its stomach. And so they got the nut back. And all of a sudden, you know, I think they probably had just a handful of crossbows left. So they were all thinking it was a miracle from God that they were able to replace this bolt that the crossbow had lost. So that's one of my favorite stories from there.
What are the chances of that? That's crazy.
That's wild. Yeah. So yeah, conquistador stories. My next one I'm going to go down, and I'm still doing the research on this, is going to be golly, what's his name? But Aguirre. If you look up Aguirre, I'm going to call this the craziest conquistador of all time.
What makes him so crazy?
The man was a madman. So he comes to Peru. And a lot of these guys are criminals when they come in the first place. Like, it took, not all of them, but like a lot of them to get recruited from Spain to even come to the New World. You know, they're looking for anything.
Yeah.
And Aguirre, if I'm saying his name correctly there.
Aguirre.
Oh, nice.
What is this, Steve? 1972?
Oh, the Wrath of Gods. That's a sick title.
That's on
Aguirre. Okay, forgive my gringo accent.
That's all good.
And so he shows up in Peru.
That's why I said Puerto Rico guy, not
yeah,
Puerto Rican.
Exactly.
Shout out to my Puerto Ricans.
It's a struggle, but he shows up in Peru. And the crown actually had laws against enslaving the natives, and they did from like pretty early on. But enforcing those laws was obviously not going well. And Aguirre here, Lope de Aguirre, he gets caught basically manipulating and exploiting the natives, and so a judge sentences him to a flogging, basically public humiliation, where they all, kind of beat on you for a little bit in front of the entire public. And the story is, and it might be on this Wikipedia page here, the story is that he never forgot that. And he followed that judge for 3 years across Peru, Ecuador, and just was trying to go find this guy so he could get his vengeance. Finally,
the judge was over there.
The judge was down in, I believe it was down in like the Cusco region. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And so he gets word that Aguirre is looking for him, and Aguirre is just marching across south of the Andes. Basically, his entire mission for 3 years is to find this judge, and he finally catches him and kills the guy. And just as like shit was about to hit the fan for Aguirre and justice was about to come, they needed him and any man they could get to like suppress some rebellions that were happening. So they kind of forgave him real quick. And so quickly, all these conquistador men, they quickly realized we need to get rid of these guys. We need to go make them useful somewhere else before they all start a rebellion. And they send him north once again to like the land of cinnamon, La Canela, looking for the lost cities of gold, all these different legends of El Dorado, basically just to give them something to do. And I don't want to, well, we'll talk about it. So basically, I didn't want to spoil it because I'm about to make a video on this, but whatever, let's do it. Let's give it to y'all.
Everyone still go watch the video. It's gonna be a banger.
Aguirre is just kind of a soldier. He doesn't really have any authority, but very quickly starts playing his cards to start a mutiny, to start a rebellion, and starts whispering, complaints about the guy in charge. And pretty soon, him and some guys get together and they kill the main captain. Do you know his name by the chance, Joey? The actual guy they end up murdering? So
might be on his Wikipedia.
Aguirre takes over. And they're starving. They're on the Amazon at this point.
Yeah, keep going.
And he basically makes it a rule that if anyone is unenthusiastic that day, they must be planning a rebellion. And so he just starts killing everyone left and right. People are paranoid. He writes a letter to the king declaring himself the new king of eventually, when he gets up to Venezuela, that territory, that he no longer serves the king. And the guy's just a total madman. Long story short, they make it to the island of Margarita, which is right off the coast of Venezuela. How they got from the Amazon to the island of Margarita, just venturing up these different streams and channels and tributaries.
Can we
on
see
a boat.
Map of that?
Yeah, there is a map.
Crazy.
There's definitely a map up there.
And it's also Deep found it. So a year later, Aguirre participated in the overthrow and killing of Ursula and his successor, Fernando de Guzman. So
Exactly.
That's who you're referring to. Yeah, let's see this map. That's even off the top of my head. Let's pull up South America.
If you put in his name and then like Conquistador map. Okay, let's see here. There's got to be one. Yeah, this one might be.
We could almost follow it on Google Maps, though, right?
You could.
Like if we look,
he goes up.
You said it's up to
I know
Venezuela.
he for sure goes up the Rio Negro from the Amazon at some point. So if you can find that area, he's deep in the Amazon. But long story short, finally, after he writes this letter to the king, some of his men go, "Okay, well, we've had enough. We can't betray the king." And when he gets to the island of Margarita, a bunch of his men end up killing him and ripping him to shreds. They quarter him, and the guy ends up dying a pretty miserable death. But
he was the first Nicky Santoro.
Yeah.
Right.
So that video is going to be called The Craziest Conquistador of All Time. The legend is that when he was chasing that judge from Ecuador to Peru, the legend is he did that barefoot, that he didn't have shoes. Like there's crazy lore with the conquistadors that keep coming
Aguirre
up.
pursued Esquivel to Lima, Quito, and then to Cusco, missing him in all three places. For 3 years, he trailed Esquivel on foot and without shoes. That is dedication. His soldiers following this obstinate pursuit with interest. Aguirre found him in Cusco, taking a nap in the library of his house and wearing a coat of chainmail he had always worn for fear of Aguirre. Sleep with one eye open, motherfucker. Yeah. Aguirre crept up to the sleeping Esquivel and stabbed him twice with a dagger. When the male stopped his blows to the former magistrate's body, he stabbed him in the right temple, that'll do it, and killed him. Protected by friends who had hidden him, Aguirre fled from Cusco and took refuge with a relative in Huamanga.
Yeah, and then he got away with it for a while. Like they let him go. They're like, okay, well, we do need you to like help us squash this next rebellion. If you could just not kill any more judges, that would be great.
There's someone I'm thinking of. I hate when this happens. I'm thinking of like some movie and some character, and I can see it, but I can't see the face and can't place it. To where they're just like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna go kill him.
Yeah,
and they just like bloodhound hunt him forever, and that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, when I do some cooking with these AI visuals, I'm gonna make them look wild. Like, you're gonna see it in his eyes. It's getting good. The AI visuals are getting better.
They're getting better.
Nano Banana, which is like what I use to, here's some of the secret sauce. A lot of people will go and they'll just immediately generate a video right away with a prompt. That's not the way to do it. You want to generate the image first and get the image with Nano Banana, which is going to be a lot more accurate, a lot more consistent, a lot more character consistency. And then you want to use a detailed prompt to actually animate that.
So, some of these documentaries, like this is even before YouTube got huge in this stuff, but like, think like The Men Who Built America, if you ever saw that, where they use fucking F-list actors to do very shitty scenes and whatever.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff where like AI will be better.
Yeah, B footage.
And for B footage, when you're putting out weekly content on YouTube and telling stories of things, especially in the ancient past, it'll be better. Where I run into a big problem with this is what we just saw a few weeks ago with where this could be headed. And Deef and I were talking about this on our Patreon episode. We both feel this way. But you see what Darren Aronofsky is doing?
No, I didn't.
Can you pull this up, Deef, on Twitter? So Darren Aronofsky is a very well-known Hollywood director. I don't know if he's like trying to be edgy or like ahead of the curve and experiment. I don't like faulting people for experimenting, but I do think there's like a line where there's a point of no return with some stuff. So obviously it's the 250th anniversary of, the Declaration of Independence coming up this summer. And so he has decided to do a series that he directed and set up that is exclusively AI created.
Dang, he beat me to it. I was trying to do
That's what I'm saying, though. But this is real Hollywood, like with real movie storytelling, like trying to replace actors. This is not B-roll documentary footage.
Right.
And they're going to be a series of a bunch of, it sounds like 10 to 20 minute, episodes of events in the Revolutionary War. And the saddest part about this to me is, like The Patriot is one of my favorite movies ever. The Revolutionary War is one of the most undercovered. We talked about the Conquistador period not getting covered. The Revolutionary War is one of the most undercovered, underdone things by Hollywood ever. And it's fucking, the history's insane. I know AMC did the show Turn, which was solid, about the Culper spy ring. But like, if they had really gotten a full budget, they could have done it way bigger than they did. And it's like, so now I've been begging for them to really make something good for a long time, and the actual artists, not like YouTube documentary type stuff, the actual artists now want to replace humans to do it. This is where I draw the line, and I go, no.
Right, for sure. Like they got the budget, like just make something sick.
Make something sick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what I do is I add a lot of maps. I'll add historical photos as well, and if I can get a historical video, I'll do it too. But as I'm actually narrating the story, it does help to have a visual.
Hell yeah.
Beat by beat by beat by
Hell
beat.
yeah.
I've always wanted to do something cinematic, and this is like kind of my opportunity to do it a little bit. My most recent one is the De Soto expedition. So Hernando de Soto, pull that one up. That one, I found a new generator, and like they allowed me to, it didn't censor me as much. Like there's one shot where I'd show some dude getting murked with an arrow in the back of his neck. No, it's three other, those are the mummies. I got a little distracted for a while from my Conquistadors versus the Giant of Alabama.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge help. Thank you.
Tuscaloosa was,
that's the one you want?
Tuscaloosa was supposedly 7 feet tall here. And I got a lot of shit for this because they said an arrow can't penetrate steel. Well, the Conquistadors said that there could. This is the reason I did that, was the Conquistadors in their writing said that these arrows that they were coming across with these native tribes in Florida were penetrating their steel. Oftentimes they're actual mel, which is probably a lot easier than like that steel plate there. But so it's a crazy story. Quite a disaster of an expedition. And
this was in Alabama?
Well, this was through Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. Like, I mean, they were going all over the place. And Hernando de Soto, have you ever heard of like the Icarus deception? Like if you fly too close to the sun.
Of course.
Hernando de Soto is like the perfect example of this.
Why?
This man had wealth beyond measure with what he did down in Peru. I mean, he was like the number 3 guy in charge down in Peru. He had more wealth than you could imagine. He probably, I don't know how much he made in Nicaragua, but he probably doubled it there. Goes back to Spain, is chilling, decides he wants to go back to the New World. He's going to become the governor of Cuba, and he's going to go conquer La Florida, which is this huge area of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. And the man ends up dying of fever on the Mississippi River. I mean, it's like, he had it all. He could have just sailed away and left it to somebody else. Instead, he died a miserable death on the Mississippi riverbanks. But this story right here is crazy. This guy's name is Juan Ortiz. This is actually, a lot of people think the story of Pocahontas and John Smith, like the love story, is actually based off this Spaniard right here.
Juan Ortiz?
Yeah, he got, he was with the Grijalva, or the, sorry, I'm losing there was an expedition that 12 years earlier had landed on Florida, and it was complete disaster. They had a lot of storms, and basically the Narvaez expedition. Sorry, I was trying to think of it. And he was a castaway and got saved by these natives, and was basically a slave for them for several years. And then the DeSoto expedition shows up 12 years later, and they see this guy that looks like a Spaniard, and he's looking at them. And all of a sudden, it's like he'd forgotten how to speak Spanish. He starts speaking to them in Spanish, and they go, "That's a Spaniard," with the natives. And so he was fluent in their language and was a really pivotal part of going through the American Southeast as the translator, basically. And spoiler alert, he dies too on the Mississippi River. Basically, this entire expedition, I think it's like half, ends up dying. I think over 300 people end up dying on this. So
yeah, that's the crazy part about these stories. They're so complex from, I don't know the term I'm looking for, but just bear with me here, from like a moral, ethical, historical standpoint, because it's like these guys, for referring just to the conquistadors for a second, they discovered lands that were unknown and set the pathway for what became Western civilization over here.
Yep.
And the missions that they went on were daring and crazy and brave, and, charted land, created maps that we were able to use to then, build this whole thing. But there was also, these were also extremely imperfect men, as you've already pointed out many times today, that were not just flawed criminally in many cases, but also flawed egotistically and in what they wanted to discover. And they ended up meeting their own demise, as you're pointing out. And yet the things that they were able to accomplish in what were their tragic missions for a whole host of reasons were the baseline to what we have. It's very fascinating to think about.
Yeah. The rise and fall of New Spain it's up there with the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
I agree with you.
And once again, Hollywood, it's time to make some movies about it, because it is the Spanish conquest of the New World, in my opinion, is the most impactful thing that's happened in history to date. This starts in history. Look at the Columbian exchange. So as a result of this moment, we think of Italians and lasagna and pizza, and it's all ingredients coming from the Americas. Tobacco helped.
Hey, wait a minute. Back up.
Hey.
You're in New Jersey.
Hey.
You can't just say that.
Last night I ate some good pizza. I can't remember. It was airport pizza. Little Tony's. Little Tony's.
All right. I almost want to cut that out. Jesus Christ.
It was pretty good.
You're operating from behind, but keep going.
Tonight I've been told that I'm going to go to North Hoboken. There's another pizza place. Dave Portnoy gave it like 8.9 or something. I'm going there tonight.
That's better.
But my point I'm trying to make is the Italians didn't have tomatoes before this.
That's bullshit.
Tell me, am I wrong on this?
That's just my knee-jerk reaction. I'm calling bullshit.
It's true. They didn't have tobacco, potatoes.
I would believe that, but
potatoes, tobacco, all these things existed in the Americas and came over to the Old World as a result of this moment of contact between the Spanish and the natives.
So they didn't have tomatoes.
They didn't have tomatoes. No, tomatoes come from the New World.
Get the fuck out of here. Tomatoes were introduced to Italy from the Americas in the 16th century via the Columbian exchange. I feel like my whole life is a lie.
I'm telling you, this moment in history is one of the biggest moments, Maybe I went overboard saying it's the biggest, but it's got to be up there. This is when the new world meets the old world meets the new world, and this entire exchange of spices, goods, and ways of life, start blending together really quick. I mean, within 50 years, there are really less than that. There are huge settlements in at least the Caribbean. And then also, Mexico City starts to rise really fast after the conquest of Mexico. And this entire exchange starts happening. And, not far after that, all that money and that gold that went to Europe, a lot of that ends up funding developments that happen with like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So it's a huge part of history. And tomatoes, man.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's really fucked up.
Tobacco's the one for me. Like
I could see tobacco. That makes sense.
That one's probably the most used drug in the world, right?
Yeah.
Maybe caffeine.
I was going to say it's coffee and tobacco.
Yeah, right. Coffee and
nicotine, if you will. But
right.
No, it's not the right way to say it. It's coffee and tobacco. Sorry.
Totally.
But that's, you think about how the timelines of what things would take back then. So maybe like as a baseline, just to give people a picture of this. When the conquistadors are sailing over to the Americas in the late 15th century and then 16th century especially, first of all, how many would they send at a time? How many boats would come over? How many men would be coming over? I don't know if you want to use one specific conquistador as an example, whatever's easiest for you, but like what kind of numbers are we looking at and what kind of provisions were they bringing with them?
Like the first one is like the Nina Pinta Santa Maria. So you got the 3 ships with Columbus.
Right. I've seen Step Brothers.
How many, right. It's a great movie. How many people were on that expedition, Joey? And what a lot of people don't, Columbus is another one. I have a Columbus video. People like to say that Columbus didn't discover anything. That's not entirely true. Columbus had 4 voyages. So a lot of people think that he was just hanging out in the Caribbean. He had 4 voyages, and he actually did land in Nicaragua, which is technically North America. And he also was the first European to see the South American continent as well. He was right off the coast of Venezuela. He's kind of interesting. And sorry if I kind of forgot what your question was, but
we were talking about men with provisions. We'll just answer that real fast so people have it. So estimates say on the 1492 expedition that we always talk about, he had around 86 to 90 men.
Yeah. And so he and people get mad when I say this, but you can read his journal. He thought the island of Cuba was Japan for a while. At one point, they brought these interpreters with them, and they were going inland on the island of Japan just in case they were about to meet the Khan of China, and they might be able to speak with him with these interpreters that they thought might be similar to the language. And it took them a while. In fact, it wasn't until Balboa, I think in 1511, crossed over from Panama to see the Pacific Ocean that they got verification that, oh yeah, this is a whole new world. This is not Asia. I'm sure most of them had figured it out by then, but that Balboa moment in 1511. So what is that? What's my math here? That's, it's 18 years. Yeah. 18 years after, or I guess, sorry, 19
years after Columbus,
exactly.
500 years ago plus.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but yeah, Columbus's story, he's got some wild stories too.
He was also though, like, you can say multiple things at the same time. Discovered stuff, led missions here, also really not great guy.
Yeah, well, once again, a lot of these guys are, especially Columbus's men, were bragging about some of their atrocities they were committing.
Like what?
There's a guy named, I think his name was, he was an Italian actually, Michel de Sueno. If you want to look that up, Michael de Sueno, Cueno. But he brags about a woman, in one of his letters. Fact check that name because that's a pretty big, thing. But he talks about how he got it. I put this in my documentary, but there's not my documentary, my video. And then, they said they didn't enslave the natives, that they would bring them back as representatives to the king and queen of Spain. But, a lot of those people didn't even make it on the way back. Right. And when they actually got there, they were likely sold into slavery. So
one of the darkest things about human nature that I would love to say is not still a thing, but it is around the world, is the extremely unholy and sinister alliance of war, conquering.
Yep.
This still happens all over the world today. Yep. It's viewed as, think about the semantics of it, which is like gross to say it that way, but you have militaries that are, in most places around the world comprised of a bunch of dudes who live together for months and years at a time. And they're fucking testosteroned up and they're told to go conquer this place because it's evil and their people have done evil things. That's how it's always sold. And then they go in there, and as their fruits of war, they get to do the worst thing you could ever do to innocent women. And it still happens today. But this was quite literally, for thousands of years, not only something that was allowed, but was encouraged as a prize of war. You conquer, you get to go do that. And that is just something that will never fully process to me. How there's even a rush with that. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. And it happened over and over again, for sure. And, there's the Columbus with his 4 expeditions, really, he gets the worst rap out of all the conquistadors because of, he's I guess got the provenance. He's the one that first discovered the Americas for Spain. But when it comes to death tolls and when it comes to, sheer numbers, there's a lot of other conquistadors that far out surpass Columbus.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
And so, this is a complex of, we'll call it both a tragedy and a complex of a situation that happened 500 years ago where you had one group that had better technology, right? Masts and sails, that is a type of technology.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. And a horse, that is a type of technology.
Yep.
Right. A cannon, gunpowder, that's all technology. And so arriving and then basically having their way with the spoils, it's a brutal history. And it's one of the reasons probably Hollywood hasn't touched it. But
that's the other thing. It's like, it's brutal. Of course, we just outlined that quite literally, but you wouldn't touch any parts of history.
I know, exactly. So I'm just wondering how much time needs to go by before we actually make the Spanish versus Aztec movie. I can confirm everyone wants to see it. It's my most watched videos on I had 17 million views on Facebook.
On Facebook
with the series where I basically clipped 31-minute episodes from my original Spanish versus Aztec video. It got all of those combined got 17 million views on Facebook. The one on YouTube, just the full one, is about 1 million. People want to watch that movie.
We live in this era where everyone who has the strongest opinion is who gets attention online. So people get afraid of the people who are going to be like, how can we talk about, why are we glorifying all these, whatever. It's not what it's about. It's about telling the story of how things happen and revealing what human nature is. I don't see anyone complaining about Game of Thrones and how brilliantly, I might add, they showed the very dark side of human nature in addition to also good sides as well, but a lot of dark sides. It's fictional, but it's based on
Yeah.
real world type stuff. Like
Yep.
this is what it is. History is very complex.
Yep. So there's a author named Kevin Sepel that I'd like to shout out. He has a book series called Conquistador Voices. And I think
Let's pull 'em
Hollywood, pull it up. I think Hollywood could use his approach to this. He basically, at the very beginning of the book with the introduction, prefaces and says, I'm going to tell the conquistador side of the story because, well, that's our best primary sources of this and really only primary sources of this. And then he also adds the preface of, there's probably embellishment here like there is with any victor in history. However, I'm not going to constantly I'm not going to constantly interrupt myself to continue to remind you of that throughout this book. And we're just going to roll. We're going to roll with what they say. And that's what he does in this book. So yeah, his first volume is, it's Columbus, Hernan Cortés, and then Pizarro down in Peru. And then his second volume has De Soto, a guy named Cabeza de Vaca, which is one of my favorite conquistador stories. He was actually a good man, in my opinion.
He's a good man.
Yeah, he was a good man. He was part of that Narvaez expedition earlier that I said had that Juan Ortiz stranded. A disaster of an expedition that ended up having Cabeza de Vaca, which means cowhead in Spanish. But he ended up stranded on the shores of Galveston with like 4 other dudes
In Texas,
was naked. I mean, just had nothing to his name, was starving, had swallowed a lot of salt water, and the natives saved him. But part of, as a result, back then being saved was you're going to be our slave for a while. Like you can't just live here for free. And so they save him, and he becomes a bit of a wandering miracle healer.
A wandering miracle healer?
Yes. The natives were insisted that like his role was going to be, he was going to go heal people. And so he would do the sign of the cross. He would do, I'm not Catholic, so I'm not sure the exact terminology here, but he would do these like Catholic prayers, probably the rosary, over these natives. And his story that he tells, along with some other conquistadors that survived that corroborated this, was that it was working. These people that were on their deathbed, they would basically do these prayers, and the next day they'd be walking around. And so he develops a bit of a following. All of a sudden, he starts wandering from tribe to tribe. He kind of gains his freedom, and word starts to spread. This guy will heal you. Like he's got powers. And so they do more prayers over these people, and he'd go to the next tribe, and people would be following him along the way. He does this for 8 years, I believe, before he wanders all through Texas, the Texas border, Galveston, down through North Mexico, finally winds up in modern day Sinaloa, like near Culiacan. And that's somewhere around there is where he runs into Spaniards for the first time. And unfortunately, he had this huge group of natives that were following him, almost like he was this holy man. And these Spaniards ended up being slavers. They were looking for natives to enslave. And the story is that Cabeza de Vaca did everything he could to try to stop them from enslaving these people who had saved his life. But
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. He ends up becoming a pretty high up official down in Paraguay in South America. And in everything I've read about him, he always was a champion for native rights. I'm a big fan of Cabeza de Vaca. He was a good man.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We got on this tangent though. We were talking about that author. What was his name again? Who said at the front, this is what it is. I'm not going to say this again.
Yeah.
Let's tell the story. So he had multiple volumes, and you said each one covered a different conquistador.
Yeah, he's got multiple volumes, and it's great. I love it. The audiobook's really good.
Can we Google this guy as well, Steve? This is really fascinating to me. This is the kind of guy I'd love to get on the podcast.
Probably my favorite author from the Conquistadors. And, I got him cited through a lot of my Conquistador books because a lot of his stories, the way he would tell them, is what inspired me in the first place to even make the videos.
Wow. Yeah,
Kevin
he's got to wear that fedora in here if we get him in here.
Heck yeah.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah, I'd like to meet him someday too. Kevin Sepel, if you're out there, you're awesome. Love your books.
So cool. Okay, I'm gonna have to check those out. So the Vaca, kind of good guy. We had that.
I think
beef
so.
as well. Do we still have that page up of the Vaca? So this is what you're talking about. Ambassador for Christ. From his own telling, one of Cabeza de Vaca's greatest accomplishments in his journey was bringing peace throughout the land. As the travelers passed from one indigenous group to the next, warring groups would immediately make peace and become friendly so that the natives could receive the party and give them gifts. Cabeza noted in his personal account of the journey that in this way we left the whole country in peace. Cabeza de Vaca saw these events as part of his purpose in America, writing that he believed that God was guiding us to where we could serve him. According to de Vaca, his greatest challenge came when he attempted to bring peace between the conquering Spanish army and the natives, as you were saying. As Cabeza approached the area of Spanish settlement, he and his companions grieved to see the destruction of indigenous villages and their inhabitants' enslavement. Cabeza claimed that out of fear of the Spanish army, many natives chose to hide in the forest and risk starvation, leaving fertile land uncultivated. And that's the thing. It's like, if we're going to zoom out here,
Yeah.
obviously it's brutal and the things they did are mortally wrong in every way. I don't want to be misheard here, but like, you come to this new land that you thought was like fucking Japan. You find out it's not, and it's actually like a new land. There's a bunch of people here who have an entirely different custom and culture, religion, everything, way of living, way of talking, etc. Less technology than you as well, and who also have the ability to kill in very biblical kind of ways.
Yeah.
You know, and so remove for a second what you've already well laid out about a lot of these conquistadors not being great guys. Let's even look at the guys who might have been okay guys. There's a fear there
Yeah.
of what this could be. And the human nature element, unfortunately, becomes us or them,
Yeah.
which then leads to the dignification, if you will, if that's the right word to even say there, but you know what I mean, of things that are totally undignified.
Right.
That you should never, like enslavement, killing fucking people, let alone, you know, innocent women and children, completely wrong.
Yeah.
But that fear can lead you to do awful things, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Fear is like the driver of all awful things. Another cool story about Cabeza de Vaca, if it's all right, if we got time for him.
We got as much time as you want, brother.
Because I love him, and they're all starting to pop up in my head again. So he gets stranded on the coast of Galveston and is taken in by very impoverished natives. These are not like this. The natives that are taking him in are also struggling, and they're giving him the last shirt off their back, so to say, right? There's not much out there. And so, you know, that's part of the reason why he, I think, had the sympathy that he did, is he understood that. Now, he does get enslaved momentarily because he has nothing. Eventually he starts trading like trinkets and stuff he would find on the coast, but he still kind of always had to go back. And every now and then he would see one of the other conquistadors who was also enslaved by a separate group, and they'd come across each other and they'd say, "What's up?" for a little bit, and they'd talk before like they had to go separate ways. Well, at some point they decide they need to escape and go further inland and take their wandering miracle healers talents elsewhere, right? And he comes across them again. And the only way, you know, they can't write to each other. So he says, "Hey, it's prickly pear season." For like 3 or 4 months out of the year, prickly pears are a fruit that grows on cactus out there. So for 3 or 4 months out of the year, that is all they ate. They ate nothing else. That's what they like gorged on, was the juices of this prickly pear. And he said to him, "Next full moon, meet me at the prickly pear fields and we're getting out of here." And he waited for like 3 days around the time of the full moon, and him and his companions show up and they find each other and they get out of there. And it's just like, to me, that's, you know, thinking about, I can text anybody at any time. I can send a message anytime. I can FaceTime my family whenever I want. And they had a plan ahead of time. Meet me at this spot at the full moon at the prickly pears during season. And I think it was months later, maybe the first full moon of prickly pear. I can't remember exactly how he did it, but they met up and they got out of there and then went on to the next place. And that's when they start to gather their following, because they're doing healing work as they're going. So, and you know, this whole thing can get into like the placebo effect, and you know, what was happening? Why were those people healing? You know, and a lot of people say it's the placebo effect, but when you actually study what the placebo effect is, it's pretty incredible. I myself, I'm a believer. Like I believe in God. And there's a book called You Are the Placebo. And basically they have to do like triple blind studies. They don't even want the doctors to understand what it is they're doing because somehow it affects the results of the test, And so if you give somebody hope, that's a miracle,
I do believe in that.
Yeah, me too.
I do believe in that. There's one of my friends from when I was a kid that I grew up with, this kid, Nick Baud, is one of the most amazing stories I've ever seen. He was diagnosed, very extremely healthy guy, college athlete. He was diagnosed with severe cancer back in, all cancer is severe, but I believe it was like stage 4 cancer back in August 2020. And, I found out about this maybe like a year later, and I would keep in touch with him because he was just like the best guy ever. And he has got himself into remission.
Wow.
6 different times.
Wow.
Every time a bad update comes in after some sort of victory where it's like you're looking at it going, oh,
yeah,
I don't know, that one's going to be tough to come back from. He fucking does.
Right.
And the unwavering self-belief, and I'm sure he has his moments like any human being does, but the unwavering self-belief he has to battle this thing and continue living and winning against all odds over and over again. You cannot tell me that there is not something, I don't give a fuck what you call it, magical, spiritual, otherworldly, whatever it is.
Placebo
within that that is making that possible. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
That word placebo is often a word that is used to dismiss that stuff. But when you actually look at what the placebo is, I think that's proof in many ways. So yeah, it's a wild story, man. And yeah, Cabeza de Vaca, it's an interesting name. It means cow head, or head of the cow. And it's one of the best conquistador stories because you do have a sense that he has a pretty good moral compass for sure.
That's cool. So there's a good guy.
Yeah. I think
we like
so.
that.
Yeah.
We need that as well. You need to see. You need to see that there were people who had a good head on their shoulders. But let's go back to the beginning of this whole thing. Because let's look at Europe before they even go over there.
Yeah.
So the conquistadors obviously were being sent by, the royal family in Spain to go do their exploring. We know that at the time, England had power over there.
Yep.
France had power over there. You had the fucking Vatican over there as well, in Italy and
also
in the Vatican.
The Moors, the Muslims were just getting expelled at that point from Spain. So this is all happening. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's another big group too.
Meaning that there's a lot of different power structures there. Yeah. What compelled Spain to kind of win this race at the beginning and be the people that were trying to land on the moon for that era, if you will?
Good question. So Columbus, first of all, the Crusades, round 2, I believe, had just happened. And Queen Isabella is like in the middle of expelling the last part of the Moors from like Granada. And so Spain, the way we think of it now and then even, is actually relatively new. This new kingdom that has expelled this the Islam basically from the area. Columbus starts hearing, and Columbus and others, they supposedly start hearing rumors of strange objects that are drifting up on the shore and some of the islands out there that have carvings. There was even stories that bodies were drifting up on shores that looked different than other bodies. I don't know how much I'd believe that. You'd think that would decompose, but this is all what they're writing. Right. And he goes to Portugal first. He actually went to Portugal first and told them like, hey, I'm pretty sure that if we go west, we're going to find Asia. And so
who's in charge in Portugal?
I can't remember his name, but they decline it. But also at the same time, what's the guy's name? The guy that Portugal was more concerned about going around Africa. And at the time, Da Gama, is that his name?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he is making a lot of progress going around Africa to get to the Spice Islands out near India. And so once Columbus gets denied by Portugal, he goes to the crown in Spain, and they're very interested because Portugal's already solidified their route. Yeah, around Africa.
Vasco da Gama is who you're talking
Vasco
about.
da Gama.
Got it. Yep.
And so Portugal's already solidified that route. And so if Spain wants to compete, they got to go do a little bit of a gamble west, because Columbus is saying, if we go west, I'm pretty sure we're going to find Asia and it'll be a direct route. We won't even have to go around Africa. Little did they know, though, that what they found ended up being an even bigger jackpot than the Spice Islands of Asia. And then this leads to the golden era of Spain. Spain was the most powerful country in Europe by far after this for at least 200 years. Actually really long, into the late 1700s. They start going to war with Britain, and I don't know a whole lot about that topic at the end there. That's something I want to dive into, is that golden era of Spain. Yeah. But wealth beyond measure. The crown gets their royal fifth with everything that these guys are taking.
And look at how many lands today in the Americas still speak Spanish, despite everything that happened afterwards. Deef, would you be able to pull up, this has got to exist. We got to have something like this, but like a map, what the map of the world looked like to Spanish royal family in 1450.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I want to know like what they thought it looked like.
So at the time, they're even trying to fight for their own land, because there's still, the Moors are still in there. It depends on what I guess you call the Spanish family. So.
Whoa, that's what they thought the map was?
Oh, of the world. I thought you meant of Spain.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. What am I looking at there, Deef? Is that the world?
What's the year on
the
that?
Fremora map is a map of the world. Yep, you nailed it. Made around 1450 by the Italian cartographer Fra Mauro, which is considered the greatest memorial of medieval cartography. It is a circular planisphere drawn on parchment and set in a wooden frame that measures over 2 by 2 meters, including Asia, the Indian Ocean, Africa, Europe, and the Atlantic. It is orientated with south at the top. The map is usually on display in Venice, Italy. Can we hit the picture of that?
I want that map.
That looks like a bastardized version of like Westeros and Essos, a little bit, right? Yeah. That's so cool. So that's what they thought it looked like. Yeah, look, there's Steve just zoomed in. Persia. Let's see some other places.
I love how they would label stuff on the maps back then.
Asia.
So cool.
Yeah, they were a little backwards on this. That's crazy. So think about, just from a technology perspective, think about how the literal shaping of the world changed overnight when they found this stuff.
I just was thinking too, I just saw a map recently where it shows the lines where true north. There's only certain places on the earth, due to I don't understand this, but due to the way the earth is shaped and the way that gravity works, there's only certain lines on earth where true north actually comes up on a compass. And they had to know all that when they were voyaging. These guys were smart. Columbus at one point, when he was, I think, northeast of Venezuela, wrote to the king and thought that he was sailing on what he called a bulge in the ocean. Like, imagine the ocean is flat and there's just a moment where the ocean on this, turns into a bulge. He thought he found a gravitational anomaly. And all of his compasses multiple times throughout his trips, first voyage, second voyage, and I think fourth voyage, where his compass just starts going haywire for like several days and he doesn't really know how to explain it. And they were kind of sailing blind. So yeah, these guys were smart. They had to use the stars. They didn't have GPS. They had their own internalized version of it. But
bro, when you like visit a city you haven't been to before, and your service gets a little off, and you're fucking Google map is off by one street and your little like blue circles floating, you get so pissed. Well, if you're me, you get so pissed off and you're like, fuck, come on.
Yeah.
These guys would have like all form of any type of old ass school, geographic data go wrong in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or an ocean they maybe don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like the patience. And I that is the most amazing thing about history, the things these guys in life and death situations figured out over not like an instant, like, oh my God, we got to make a decision, but over months. They'd have to like make a decision and hope 3 months later it was going to work out. And if it didn't, start the clock again. And maybe now it's 6 months for them to fix it. It's insane.
These guys were bold. And a lot of people don't like when I say that they were brave or bold, but those words don't have to mean, something virtuous necessarily.
They don't like when you state a fact.
It's just absolutely true. There's no denying that these guys were extremely brave and bold. Yeah. So, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be able to muster up the courage, the cojones to go and do that,
But that's so interesting that like Spain was that much more powerful than other places for a while there, like during that golden era, to where, we just kind of like skip over that in our heads sometimes, even though it's literally what created our civilization over here.
I do like thinking about alternative history. And when I say alternative history, I don't mean like different theories, but like what would have happened if the Spanish didn't arrive, or if there was maybe even 100 or 200 years delay before that happened, because the Aztec, they were cooking. Like they rose fast. You had Luke on here, how quick their rise was from when they got down there, from wherever they migrated from, which is quite the mystery.
Yeah. And people that didn't see episode 341 with Luke, which was the latest one where we discussed the Aztecs heavily. Would you mind just giving a brief history of where we think they derived from?
Yeah, so the Aztec supposedly came from Aztlan. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, from the north, and we don't know exactly where that's at. There's some people that speculate it's as far north as like Utah, that they were maybe, people that came down from like the ancestral Puebloan area. I don't believe that. I think that's I don't think there's any evidence for that. And then other people just think it's somewhere in northern Mexico. And they're, they had this prophecy that they would arrive at a place and basically become the rulers. And they did. And it was out at Lake Texcoco, modern day Mexico City. And it happened quick. The other day I saw, I love Joe Rogan, but he got something wrong the other day. And he did.
Joe's never wrong.
I know. Well, Joe's the man, but they were talking about how the Aztec basically inherited Tenochtitlán and all of the temples there. That's not true. I think he was confusing Teotihuacan, which is the huge pyramids that you see near Mexico City. That's a different culture. Tenochtitlan, that was built by the Aztec very quickly. The causeways in this basically island nation on Lake Texcoco, it happened very fast. And so I just want to know what the Aztec, what would have happened if they had 200 more years to continue cooking, right? They were on the up and up.
What made them so... Like, what made them so advanced civilizationally to have that kind of power?
I believe, we were talking about technology and with the Spanish. I believe that the Aztec and the natives what they had was, and I'm not an astrologist. I don't believe like that you should live your life based on astrology. I think that's like divination, right? But
divination.
Yeah, like that's like you shouldn't, and I have a point I'm going to make here. I know I'm rambling a little bit. I'm going to come back to why I'm bringing this.
Great.
But,
don't worry about it.
But I don't think like if it's Mercury retrograde or whatever, that doesn't mean, you don't go on with your life. If it's raining outside, you put a jacket on and you still go, and you just, ignore a lot of that. That being said, though, they were very in tune with the cosmos, and there's something to it, I think. Our bodies are made out of 76% water or whatever. Mm-hmm. We see what the moon does to the tides. And the natives all across both in North America, Mesoamerica, South America, they were all in tune with it. And so there's a place down in Chiapas on the Guatemala border called Yaxchilan, where my guide, when I was there, this temple had these holes, and I can send it to you later, Joey, so you can put it up there. It had these holes here, and he said that the wind would whistle through there, and the shamans would listen to the wind and compare that to where the stars were to determine on whether they should go to war or not. Joey, here's a trippy one. This isn't the Aztec, but if you go to my PDF and you go to the one that talks about Chimney Rock, Colorado, it's going to be a Google Earth slide. Yeah, this is my favorite one. This is in my book.
Whoa.
So I took that drone shot there. That's a shot I took.
That's you?
That's me. This
Nice work.
I kind of went down a little rabbit hole here. And if you go to the one before that, I think I maybe even have a video.
Wait, what is that? Is that?
This is in Colorado, man. This is like the Machu Picchu of Colorado.
Oh, I thought from far away that almost looked like a crop symbol, but it's carved in.
Yeah,
Right,
so this is a Chacoan great house here, and this is just shows you how incredible the natives really were. And here near Pagosa Springs, Colorado, if you show the map here, I'll kind of orientate us. Yeah, we're right on the Colorado-New Mexico border near there in the San Juan Mountains. And during COVID, I went up there and flew my drone around. If you go up again, I'll show you that shot. Right, go to number 15. So right here, the reason this place is so cool is every 18.6 years, something happens called the lunar standstill. And we're going to go down a little rabbit hole here.
Please.
Okay. And there was a guy named Dr. J. Malville. I can't remember which university, but he was an archaeologist. And when he was doing work up at this place called Chimney Rock, Colorado, he noticed that the tree rings, there was 2 building periods, and the tree rings showed that the building periods were 18.6 years apart from each other. And he speculated that on the full moon sometime in the 90s, I can't remember when it would have been, but during the next lunar standstill, and I'll tell you what that is in a moment, that a full moon would rise between the pillars at Chimney Rock, Colorado. And he was correct. So this one's from 2000.
The pillars?
Yes. And so the entire reason that they built this great house up in this area where there's not an immediate river nearby. It's one of the furthest eastern pueblos for the Chacoan culture, or we'll call them the ancestral Puebloan culture. The only reason it seems that they built this was to observe this phenomenon. Huh. And so here's where I'm going to kind of blow your mind a little bit, or try to. I'm going to attempt to.
You're gonna blow me. Pause.
Yeah. No diddy. So basically a lunar standstill is every 18.6 years. The way that the moon normally would, rise and fall on the horizon changes a little bit. And they noticed this, and it happens for about 3 years. We're actually at the end part of the lunar standstill that started in 2023. Now, 2026 is the last year that we're going to be in this latest lunar standstill. So you can actually see this phenomenon now. So if you go down a little bit, I thought this was interesting. Like, why are they observing this lunar standstill that happens every 18.6 years? And I've always been really into economics and cycles and cyclical theories like the fourth turning, or even
you're gonna fit in here.
Nice, yeah. And even like Ray Dalio, his business cycle is like 18.6. It's like 18 years. His boom and bust. He calls it his boom and bust credit bust cycle or whatever.
Were you reading my text this morning?
No. I promise.
Some weird shit.
This isn't my book. This isn't my book.
With a bunch of people about this shit. Yeah.
And so I started going down the rabbit hole with a guy named W.D. Gann. If you go down to the next slide, I'll show you W.D. Gann. This dude in the early 20s, he created a chart, what he calls his financial timetable. And if you extrapolate that out, basically he was creating this chart that predicted boom and bust cycles every 18.6 years. Basically recession, clear the leverage, and then a new cycle starts. It gets over leveraged again, and then it happens over and over again. And I think the natives were probably, I just think it's really interesting that the natives were following the same cycle. Maybe it was based off their boom and bust crop cycles, their famine, maybe it was their abundance and famine cycles. Like this thing keeps reoccurring over and over again. Well, he predicted the Great Depression. If you extrapolate his workout, he predicts the Asian financial crisis. Before that, he predicted the 70s inflation crisis. And then go back to that picture with the moon. What year is this taken?
2007, right before the subprime crisis goes full boom.
Exactly. And so it's really interesting, and this is not financial advice, because the thing about these boom bust cycles is it can be a deflation or an inflationary thing. So good luck trying to figure out where to put your bets. But what happened in 2023, right as I was writing my book about this, and in fact, right before I published, I wrote in the book, I changed the name of the chapter to The Moon and the Stars Control the Economy and the Silicon Valley Bank Collapse. In 2023, months after the lunar standstill starts, is when the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, and they had to inject a bunch of money. Yeah. Several other things have happened since then. We got one more year of this lunar standstill cycle throughout 2026, and hopefully nothing bad happens. But W.D. Gann predicted a lot of things, and a lot of his work just so happened to coincide with the 18.6 year lunar standstill cycle. So a lot of W.D. Gann's basis for this is that. And I wonder if Ray Dalio's is as well. I don't think he's ever said that. He calls it his credit bust cycle. But I wonder, I got to think I'm
trying to get Ray in
information.
Here. I'm trying to get Ray in here so I could ask him about that.
He kind of tells it like it is. I really appreciate, he was on Tucker Carlson. And those are two dudes that maybe are different politically in many ways. Mm-hmm. And Ray Dalio, and Tucker, to his credit, just like let him cook. He's like, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
And Ray Dalio basically has a way of clearing noise and just focusing on signal. And yeah, some of the stuff he says is kind of frightening about the dollar and all that, but that's a whole nother topic that I'm not an expert on any of that, but I love this chapter in my book, or really the videos I made on it. I think it got like 1,000 views when I made it, because, it was so weird to me that those coincided. This Native American 18.6 year lunar standstill cycle that they were observing. It was very important to them. And then here you have this guy, W.D. Gann, making a timetable based off of it, and it predicts all these things in a row. So crazy.
It is crazy, and I share your fascination with things like the cycles. I love that you cited the fourth turning. People get pissed. I talk about that so much on this show, but when you look at the historical accuracy of that, even just in America, I could go to other places too, but dating back to the Revolutionary War, it is stunning, and it's a similar period. It's about a 21 and a half year period
for the different generations. Yep. Yeah. So that's what's kind of freaky about this one is you have the 18.6 year lunar standstill cycle coinciding with the unraveling, or the fourth turning, I guess.
You talk about guys like Ray Dalio, though. When I would study, I worked on Wall Street before I did this. Okay. I was not a fit, but, very interesting to see the guys who were most successful over the years there and what kind of tied them together. I always think about the story of Steve Cohen, who's for my money, the best trader of all time on Wall Street. He just, and he's a controversial guy. He owns the Mets now, but, people have thought he did insider trading and stuff in the past. It was the basis of the show Billions, actually.
Okay.
But there's no doubt he was an unbelievable trader. And he went to Penn in Philly, and around the corner from where his campus was, back in the early 80s, late 70s, whatever it was, they had the live stock ticker.
Yeah.
The earliest electronical, outside a bank or something.
Right.
And he would just go there and just, almost like Alan in The Hangover, just watch the numbers over and over again. And without thinking about what the symbol was or what industry they were in or whatever, he just had this ability to take all the noise and just reduce it down to like you're at the beach.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, are the waves coming in farther than they were 5 minutes ago overall?
Exactly.
Or are they coming in closer than they were 5 minutes ago? And to me, I say that because the guys like him, the guys like Ray Dalio, Rajaratnam, all these different dudes who were legendary traders and did it all in their own way. I think what ties them together is their ability not to spot fucking 47,000 patterns.
No.
But to just kind of see one and bet on it.
Where can I zig while everyone else zags?
That's right.
That's what it is. Like, yeah. When things get top heavy, they do the opposite. Druckenmiller's another one that's really good.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so this place, Chimney Rock, Colorado, they had smoke signals.
Signals.
Yeah, they had smoke signals that they've found, archaeologists have found on different mesas and hilltops that led all the way to Chaco Canyon, which is like the political and spiritual hub of the Anasazi, or formerly known as Anasazi, but the ancestral Puebloan world. Chaco Canyon is out in the middle of the desert in northwestern New Mexico. And basically with these signals, I think that these smoke signals or these fire signals, they could relay messages to each other pretty quickly from one mesa to the other.
Yeah.
If somebody had a dedicated job to that.
It's Lord of the Rings shit.
Yeah, it's some Lord of the Rings shit. And here we have this observation that you can still see today. I think the U.S. Forest Service does occasional tours so you can see this. I'm actually hoping that somebody gets some 4K footage of this because this is the best photo we have now. And hopefully the U.S. Forest Service is taking some good photos right now because this is happening, I think, several times a month throughout the next year. So,
what years again did you say they built that?
This would have happened in like the 1200, probably 1000. I have it on there on that slide, but 1000 AD. Probably somewhere between 1000 and 1200 AD. I know
and
that's
what civilization again?
This was the ancestral, the Anasazi is what they used to be. That's apparently a politically incorrect term now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. But the ancestral Puebloans, and then really this is a Chacoan great house, which is like the political dominant culture of the ancestral Puebloans. And it's all the way out in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And that might sound... But why that's interesting is it's pretty far east compared to a lot of it's pretty far northeast compared to everything else in the Chacoan world. And they did it because somebody at some point goes, hey, the full moon rises between these pillars during that strange time where the moon is acting different on the horizon, basically. What we would call the lunar standstill. Mm. Yeah, and all of the native cultures, the Aztec, the Inca, the mound builder cultures, they all followed this 18.6 year cycle, for sure.
When did you first look at this again?
And during COVID, they were telling me I was on spring break. I was teaching out at Hawaii at the time, and I was on spring break living with my brother in Denver when like all shit hit the fan with COVID. And I remember I got my Trump stimmy and I put half of it in Bitcoin and bought a drone and like it was like, I'm going to go start my YouTube channel. I'm going to go do something. I don't want to be locked up. And so at the time, this place was closed, but it's U.S. Forest Service land, so they couldn't stop me from going up there. Mm. And so instead of driving to the top like you normally would, I hiked like 4 miles to the top of this mountain. And flew my drone out there, did the same, went and saw all these sites out in the American Southwest. That's actually how I got started with making content.
That's cool.
My first video of all time is about the ancestral Puebloans on my YouTube channel.
So did you, I'm just curious because it fascinates me that you're into some of the same patternistic things that I am. That's really cool. But did you get into things like the fourth turning and cycle math and science or ideas, I should say, like that because you looked at this, or were you already very fascinated with that?
I was familiar with it. I used to be into I still am into it, but I used to really like nerd out in the Bitcoin community back in the day. And
How far back in the day?
2017.
Okay.
But
yeah.
but there was I can't remember his name. I want to give him a shout out. There was a good writer. There's people that are watching the podcast. If you're familiar with the Bitcoin circles, you'll remember who he is. But he wrote a cool thing about the fourth turning and how like all this stuff that's happening now, whether it's the invention of Bitcoin or the Wall Street, the subprime mortgage collapse in 2007. His name is Brandon
Kittum.
Brandon Kittum. Yeah.
Yep.
I just remembered it all at the top of my head.
I got it right here.
And shout out to him. And it's a great article. And
do you want me to read the key aspects of it?
Please do, because it's been years.
All right, because Steve's outside right now. So key aspects of Bitcoin in the fourth turning, according to Brandon, I guess. Declining trust and institutional decay. The fourth turning describes a period of crisis where existing institutions fail, fostering a need for alternatives like Bitcoin, which operates independently of government control. Crisis-driven adaptation. As society faces increased geopolitical instability, debt, and monetary crises, i.e., Iran and Venezuela, the demand for hard money increases. Trustless safe haven. Bitcoin serves as a neutral, decentralized, and censorship-resistant asset, making it a safe haven for wealth during periods of high inflation and societal instability. Accelerating growth. Analysts suggest that Bitcoin will experience accelerated adoption and price growth during this era of transformation. So the fourth turning suggests a shift from centralized top-down structures to a decentralized future where Bitcoin serves as the foundation for a new monetary system.
Yeah.
When you're plugging in.
And so that was the first time I had heard about that. And then I went and took a look at the generational theory, which was William Howe and his co-author Strauss maybe. Yeah. And basically everyone's heard the saying, strong men make good times make weak men make hard times, hard men make strong men. It's just like cycle. And so I then went down the W.D. Gann rabbit hole because he has like a cult following to this day.
W.D. Gann.
Yeah, people trade based off of his work still to this day. And once I read the literature on Chimney Rock, Colorado, and they're talking about this 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle, I realized that this was what W.D. Gann was talking about. And I just thought it was funny that they had the same interest back then as these guys that are playing the stock market do today, for whatever reason. And so humans, I do think there's something about the cosmos that has us plugged in, that is influencing us, and that a lot of the, people are always wondering if this news event right here is going to crash the stock market. I don't know what comes first. I kind of wonder if some of that is destiny. These boom and bust cycles are already programmed in. So
time is a flat circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Do you ever think about when you see so many patterns like this that do line up? And I have another thought on this, but I want to stay with this point for a second. When you see so many patterns across history that happen to line up for different reasons that describe similar phenomena across the sociocultural things, economic things, historical things, whatever it may be, do you ever wonder if it's all a simulation?
Yeah, a little bit. I believe in God, and I feel like simulation theory is just a 2020. I just feel like it's a 2026 definition of what's already been written in the Bible and all that stuff. So
I could see that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We put fancy kind of secular language on stuff where it's the new way of speaking, which is fine. We live in a more secular society right now than back then. And so we have to create new lingo for it. But simulation theory, yeah, for sure. That being said, it just makes sense, right? We are little beings on this planet, and gravity and gravitational pulls of other things around the cosmos got to be having some type of impact on us. Mm-hmm. This is going to sound wild, but I'm from a small cow town. And when you drive and you're watching all the cows out in the field, the wind changes slightly and their heads all come up at the same time. Something happens that makes them all react as if they're one. We're kind of doing the same thing. Like if you've ever been to a music festival and just watched the crowd, we all react on a massive level together. And so the same thing applies. Like the stock market's just a tool for betting on human behavior, like mass human behavior. And so when you have these things happening, lunar standstill, I don't know how you can measure what's happening, but I think something's probably happening, right?
I think so.
You know, and that being said, I don't think you should live your life based on it. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it's Mercury retrograde next week. It means I'm going to have a bad week. Well, now you're going to have a bad week because you just have said that. So I don't really try to pay attention to it too much, but I knew enough about it to nerd out on that chapter. So
yeah, your thoughts become your reality.
Right.
I'm not even trying to sound woo-woo at all. Like I've really spent a lot of the last year looking more closely at the science of that. And it's so true. People predict their own lives on the basis of what they feed their brain internally every single day. And it's been proven. It's been proven in science. I talked about that Japanese scientist, Masaru, who studied how people spoke to themselves down to the cellular level and the effect it had on their outcome. The negative speakers had a V outcome in the wrong direction compared to the positive speakers over time because he could observe literal physical cellular changes within the body strictly based on the impetus that was given in the words that were spoken to it. That is fucking unreal. Yeah,
exactly. And then you can tie all that back into our talk about the placebo effect and hope.
Yes.
And yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
I think that, you know, you talk about simulation theory being, I like how you said that, the more secular term for things that maybe we could even read in ancient holy texts like the Bible. And I think you're onto something there because my biggest problem, well, to be clear, my biggest problem with people who speak so certainly about the afterlife is that the one thing that ties us all together is none of us fucking know.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Totally.
Number two, I guess like the second biggest issue is that I've always said, I'm like, why can't these things coexist?
Yeah.
Why? As I'm saying as a possibility. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying as a possibility. It's like, is it not possible that some divine, incredible creator, which I too agree there is a God, something had to create this, you know, created so many trillions, quadrillions, whatever numbers you could say of layers that he created some sort of, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but some sort of beautiful universal algorithm that allowed these things to operate on a simulated capacity that could still include with the decision trees of a simulation scenario, the ability for people on this planet we call Earth to have free will and make their own decisions and create the simulation in whatever directions it can potentially go.
Yeah. I was not expecting to talk about this on your podcast, but I do have something to say about this. So when I think about free will versus like determinism, I think it can be both. Like we live in a determined universe and when it comes to like physical matter and the way it's moving, but conscious beings that have free will can operate inside of that. So I do believe in the Big Bang. I think the Big Bang is probably a reality or something like it, whatever you want to call it, this moment that basically determined like the trajectory of like all of this energy, which turned into mass, which turned into the earth, which turned into sun, you know? And so a determinist would say, well, we're part of that. So that means that this conversation between you and me was inevitable because we're masses that are part of that. But I actually think that conscious probably comes from consciousness. This is just my like spiritual belief, I guess. Call it my faith. Consciousness, I think, comes from outside of that like deterministic reality of this of physical things flying throughout the universe, and that people can operate independently and with free will within it. So I think it can be both. And like I do think that we control our own destiny. in many ways. But we also are susceptible to the deterministic realities of those cyclical cycles.
For sure.
How do we react to that? Like, yeah, Mercury retrograde is going to happen next week. I don't know when it's happening next, but like, does that mean I'm going to, lay in bed for a week, or am I going to go to work and do my shit? And maybe some weird stuff will happen, but like, I'm just focused on, whatever my goals are. It can be both. We can live in a deterministic world when it comes to, or deterministic universe when it comes to matter and the cycles of the planet, while still having free will, in my opinion.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Did you grow up religious? You said you weren't Catholic, but
first of all, let me just preface with like, I'm a sinner. I am not a saint. I don't even know if like I'm not like a holy man, but
bro, you're
I am
in
a
New
believer.
Jersey. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, I grew up like a Methodist, and at one point I was actually an atheist. I went through my college atheist phase.
What brought that on?
Oh, it's probably some propaganda or something. No, I was watching. Shout out Christopher Hitchens. I liked Christopher Hitchens. I used to watch a lot of Christopher Hitchens and some Richard Dawkins. You go down those rabbit holes, and then at some point, I think I'd overdosed on some magic mushrooms at one point, and was like, oh, I should go back to the drawing board, because I'm pretty sure that was God or something. Something was going on there. That was when I was in my 20s. And then eventually, I guess I've always, even during my like couple years in college, I'm 36 now. This is a long time ago.
You're 36?
I'm 36 years old.
You're one of those guys that could be like 24 or 38 and you can't put your finger on it, but damn.
36.
I would have guessed you were closer to the 24, to be honest with you. Not in brains, but
right, I appreciate that. But
must be that Puerto Rican sun.
I'm trying to get it, man. I'm trying to get it. But even during that time, I would probably consider myself like a cultural Christian. Like, it's just what I grew up with.
A cultural Christian.
Yeah. Now I believe I need to like be a better person for sure. Like, I'm human. I'm flesh. But
what was your belief moment?
My belief moment? So I told you about the magic mushroom experience. That like made me go, okay, well, there's definitely like God, I think, for sure. I should probably stop telling people I don't believe in God, because like that happened. You take 4 grams of mushrooms or whatever it was, like it doesn't matter where you're doing it, like you're gonna go somewhere else. And shit, I can't believe I'm talking about this. Hi mom, hi dad. My nephew, when my nephew was born, he was born with a lot of problems. He had a birth injury, and I said my first prayer in a decade at that moment, just hoping that we were told he was going to be like a in like a vegetated state. And I just said, if he could just be, if his brain could just heal enough to be happy and smile and laugh, please, and that happened. My nephew has cerebral palsy and a couple other things now as a result of this birth injury. But all of those prayers were answered. And so, whether it was by chance or not, I was like, whatever, like I'm going to go down this route where I said, if you could just make that happen, like I'll be a believer. And it happened. So he smiles now, he laughs, he enjoys jokes, that you can make. And if I make a goofy face, he'll laugh. And so that's where I decided, well, I'm just going to have faith. Also, Jesus is a pretty cool dude.
For sure.
Forgiving your neighbor or forgiving your enemies and like wishing well upon them is like definitely something I should work on more. Everybody should work on more. So yeah, but I'm not even trying to preach, because like I'm not a saint. I'm a sinner. But that's how I got into that, for sure.
That's a cool story, man. Yeah, I think, it's also like to see that your nephew was going to be totally non-responsive and wouldn't be experiencing life. There's some people who would hear that though and be like, well, he still has some awful limitations, but the possibility of at least being able to smile and see the beauty of the world compared to what it could have been, and you guys get to enjoy having that relationship as well. I think about this a lot. This is a bit of a different topic, but I think a lot now about the technology we've developed and the ability to play God and the dangers with that and everything. And one of the things that gets really gross when you think about it and how it could be extrapolated is, you know, whether it's intentional or unintentional as well, you know, eugenics, to where, yes, we want to be able to fix deformities and afflictions that happen within humanity, for sure. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
But we're now getting to this, like, you know, fucking build a baby era, to where there, you know, the evil where this could go to is that someone like your nephew will never get a chance to live at all.
Yeah.
If the wrong, I'm being a little complex how I'm saying this, people, so my apologies, but like if the wrong, I don't know, lack of guardrails, if you will, get put in. Do you ever think about that? Because like it's clear, like you have a great relationship, and and he's grateful to be alive, and you're grateful that he's alive. Well, but he's not operating with a full deck.
Yeah, his was a birth injury that happened. Was the main thing with him. But yes, have you seen this thing with the the CRISPR babies that they were trying out in China? They were trying to prevent. They were trying to basically make babies that would be immune to HIV, but like one of the side effects was they have way like higher than average IQs. Like these are like little genius babies. Have you seen this?
No.
Yeah, I think Joe Rogan was talking about it a couple months ago.
It's CRISPR bombshell.
They had to go to
Chinese
prison.
Researcher claims to have created gene-edited twins. Reports triggered shock reactions and call for regulation around the world. Okay, let me read this, Steve. Hong Kong, China. On the eve of an international summit here on genome editing, a Chinese researcher has shocked many by claiming to have altered the genomes of twin baby girls born this month in a way that will pass the modification on to future generations. The alteration is intended to make the children's cells resistant to infection by HIV, says the scientist. He Zhangqi of the Southern University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen, China. The claim, yet to be reported in a scientific paper, initiated a firestorm of criticism today, with some scientists and bioethicists calling the work premature, ethically problematic, and even monstrous. The Chinese Society for Cell Biology issued a statement calling the research a serious violation of the Chinese government's laws and regulations and the consensus of the Chinese scientific community. And Hayes University issued a statement saying it has launched an investigation into the research, which it says may seriously violate academic ethics and academic norms.
So like on your point earlier, you were talking about, you know, for some people, it might even, some people with genetic abnormalities, or let's say somebody with Down syndrome, you know, it would take away that experience that we have with them. But beyond that, like at this level, just me, like I'm a midwit guy. Like I'm probably not like high IQ. You know, and how am I going to compete in that world if all of a sudden these CRISPR babies that they're, you know,
that's right,
have 170 IQ or something like that. And if everybody has options to that, everybody's going to want that to be their child. Like everybody wants their child to be smart. That's going to be wild.
And also, who's going to get more access to it?
Yeah.
People of means.
Yeah.
Elites, because it's going to be expensive.
Right.
And it's going to, like, we've seen that V structure of the middle class being basically legislated away in America since the early 1980s.
Yeah.
And the wealth gap increasing so much. Now you're going to embarrassment of riches.
Right.
The wealth gap, because the wealthiest will get access. And unfortunately,
even if it is illegal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like if you need no further proof, go read Jeffrey Epstein's emails and the people he's talking with. The way these fucking people think is they are better. Therefore, they should be able to get things that other people don't, including, by the way, heinous, awful, disgusting things that no human being should ever have and should be fucking executed for even trying to attempt.
Yep.
That goes without saying. But I'm talking some of the other stuff that's not illegal.
The genetic stuff.
Right. And the way that they think about it, that paints a dystopian world to me. And where it gets morally odd is like, you know, if you're an expectant parent and you were asked, would you like a fully healthy baby Or would you like your baby to have Down syndrome? Just objectively, you're going to say, I'd like a fully healthy baby.
Or even like guaranteed fully healthy baby
Right.
versus like
Right.
rolling the dice.
Right. There's nothing wrong with saying you would rather have that.
Right.
But like, where does this get to an economic situation to where only those with the economics to be able to do that can say that? And where does this get to a moral implication? Are you familiar with the guys at Colossal Labs in Dallas?
Yeah. Well, the only reason I'm familiar with them is because I heard that they were going to maybe do some work on the Nazca mummies. But they were going to do, they did the dire wolf thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to talk about that because I think Ben, just like when that story was coming out, people were peppering him like crazy. And I don't think Ben was like that familiar with it. He was like, oh, I'll take a look at this.
I think
or whatever.
I think he should.
But I could talk to him about that. Like, we did a podcast with them. We did number 297 with Ben and Matt James, who Ben's the CEO. Matt James is the chief animal officer who spent his life working with animals, you know, and good guys. I get along with them really well. And some of the work they're doing is extremely cool. I'm fascinated by it. I'm going to go visit. We're actually all going to go see it in March and figure it out. But to their credit, they are very willing to answer the difficult questions that come up here, which is that there's a lot of ways this kind of thing could go wrong. You know, when one of the main conservation examples that they give that I'm on board with, like I'm on board with things, animal conservation is very important to me. I'm on board with things that can help save our greatest species around the world. I just want to make sure it does not get used for other things. And one of the examples that is tied to what you bring up here about this Chinese doctor, or whatever he is, researcher who figured this thing out that's got big problems, is Matt James was saying around roughly 20% of elephants die every year of something that is effectively called like elephant herpes. There's an official name for it, but he's like, it's something a lot of people, normal people who don't study the space don't know, but it's a huge problem.
It's like a virus.
Right. And so, you know, Colossal's trying to do these exciting things, almost like Jurassic Park type things with some of the ideas. And one of those ideas is to recreate some semblance of a woolly mammoth. When they're doing that,
that'd be sick.
It would be sick. But like when they're first doing that, they're designing it using CRISPR and AI in basically a computer DNA simulation, meaning it is not alive when they're designing it. And it depends on how good a data they can get to actually be able to design that, because obviously they've been extinct for so many years. But woolly mammoths are relatives of elephants.
Yeah.
So while they're designing a non-living thing, meaning it's not alive yet, so the moral implications, as far as I know, aren't really there yet, they could maybe come up with something in that genetic code that then they're like, oh, holy shit, there's a sequence that, I'm going to say this scientifically wrong, but let's just keep it simple for people out there, that they could basically inject into elephants and stop that disease from spreading. If that is what they do and that's how they do it and that's how it's used, that's awesome.
I think so too.
Right? But if they then use that to be like, oh, let's make, you know, Yao Ming, but he's Shaq. Like, all right, well, now we got a problem. Now we got like, we're creating fucking Terminator out here, and it runs into a huge issue. Yeah.
Also, he has a 205 IQ and he has a 45-inch vertical. It's like NBA 2K.
It's not, you know,
make a player.
We're moving so fast with things. We got to be careful, and we got to challenge those things. And I appreciate those guys being cool with that. And I told them, I'm like, moving forward, I'm going to have to challenge that on those stances, because, you know, if it's not in the public square that way, you get shit like this. Like what you just pointed out, you know?
But it's like, I wonder how much, you know, this is how a breakaway, like everybody talks about breakaway civilizations. That's probably what's going to, if you make that illegal, something is going to happen in the background. And I wonder how much it needs to happen before those people end up finding each other, you know, these CRISPR babies, this new population of people. And all of a sudden, you know, they're working on stuff we're not even thinking of, because they're all, you know, I don't know. It's going to be a wild future, because I don't know if making it illegal will stop it, you know?
making guns illegal don't stop criminals from getting guns.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's. I think about this one a lot.
Yeah,
I'm glad you pointed out this story from China. I wasn't familiar with that. I hadn't heard about that, but this is exactly what we're talking about. Like, there's just some things that, for all of our mega differences in the world, and boy, do our governments and peoples have some mega differences, there are some things that transcend even extreme politics or ideas or borders, I might add, things like that, where just on a personal level, we should agree we got to work together.
Yeah.
If there were an alien invasion, I would like to think that, Donald Trump, MBS, Xi Jinping, the leader of fucking Hamas, Netanyahu, Putin, the European leaders could all get in a room and be like, I know a lot of us don't like each other and want to kill each other, but like, let's work on this for a few minutes and then we'll come back to our issues. I would love to think that would be able to happen, but I don't know.
For sure. At the very least, some of this stuff, AI, genetics, all that, like maybe we can pump the brakes a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
Scary.
Yeah. So. But let's go back to the Conquistador stuff. That was a great tangent. Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we can talk whatever, Nazca mummies, Conquistadors.
We're going to get to Nazca. Cool. We might have to be doing 2 episodes. I can see this already happening because we're good. 2 hours in. Because I really want to go through in depth and give it the justice it deserves from your research. Cortés and Huaytlaca. Yeah, which I definitely just said wrong. But Cortés is the one we've kind of been beating around the bush all day with that full story. Again, your video on it, which a couple things, people. We won't even have to link that below. We're gonna co-publish this with your channel, so everyone can go subscribe to Will right now, literally by just looking at the title of the video. His channel's on there, and I believe it's your most popular video.
It is
the one on Cortés and the Aztecs. Highly recommend to check out. But let's just start at the beginning. Yep. How did Cortés? I think you started to talk about this, but I just want to put it all together. How did Cortés become a conquistador, and what were his initial goals, and how did he end up there?
So at a young age, Cortés is very interested in the Indies, is what they called, Hispaniola, modern day Dominican Republic, Cuba. He'd heard tales of it. So he goes over there at a very early age and very quickly starts amassing wealth, property, natives that are servants, but really in the name of the crown, that's what they're called, but slaves. Yeah. And pretty soon he becomes kind of a bigwig out there in both Hispaniola and then eventually Cuba. He goes and helps with it wasn't much of a conquest, but with the conquest of Cuba. And so there's this funny story. He starts to climb the ranks quite a bit, and he's everybody is really eager to go and explore. There's rumors of this land mass out west, aka Mexico, Guatemala, right? Some of these ships had gone by, but they needed permission from the crown to go do any type of conquest. You needed, at least if it wasn't from the crown, you needed it from the governor. So in this case, the governor of Cuba. And so the first expedition before Cortés was, I think his name was Juan de Grijalva. And they basically were given permission to go do a scouting mission that could possibly gather slaves. And during that time period, they go over to like the modern day Cozumel, which is an island off of Quintana Roo / Yucatan. And that's where they encounter the Maya. And they quickly realize these guys are pretty sophisticated. They have large temples. They have, a clear society that's going on here. And keep in mind, this is not the height of the Maya. This is kind of what's left over after their fall, but it's still impressive to them compared to what they were used to in the islands, right? Which was, I guess you could call it more primitive people compared to the Maya, right? And so they sail all the way up the coast then to like modern day Tabasco, Veracruz. In fact, the Grijalva River is a place that I've actually been to before. I have a sick drone shot that I put up there, and it's named after Juan de Grijalva. And they once again are seeing big signs of like a civilization there. They even meet like diplomats on the beach, and they didn't have any way to talk with them, but they could tell something was brewing in what's in modern day Mexico, that there's something big there. So they go back, everybody hears about this. Hernan Cortés, meanwhile, is, by the way, probably, whether you want to call him a monster or not, he was one of the smartest conquistadors by far. He was like, I don't know if he was a genius, but psychologically, the warfare that he will talk about here on some of these stories, he was playing chess a lot of the time. So he's getting in good favor with the governor of Cuba, and he's trying to talk him into allowing him to be the next one to go on one of these scouting missions. And, back then, you had to put skin in the game, your own wealth to go get the supplies and the men and the boats and everything you needed. And then you could also get investors, which was often the governor himself. The governor was usually one of the richest dudes, so he might invest in this. And the story is that the governor became pretty good friends with Cortés, or liked him enough, and that they were walking to church together one time to mass, and people who knew Cortés, that he was kind of a sly dog, started mocking the governor, saying, Governor, you shouldn't trust Cortés. He's going to run off with your ships and he'll never come back. And so right before the governor gives him permission to go on this scouting mission with like 500 men and some horses, and Cortés is already thinking, nah, like, I'm going for everything. He knows at this point there's something bigger over there in Mexico. And so he is quickly gathering men to get out of there as quickly as possible, because rumors are already starting to spread that these people mocking the governor, saying he's getting played by Cortés, that it's starting to work, and that the governor at any moment could change his mind. And he does change his mind, and he actually sends men to arrest Cortés right before he leaves. Cortés and his men apprehend those men, recruit several of them to join their expedition, and they sail off into the sunset at that point. They're getting their own west. And so Cortés is now all in. He is now a fugitive of this governor of Cuba, and he's going to this foreign land where, he's going to try to conquer it. And so eventually they get to modern day Veracruz and Tabasco, and that same beach that Grijalva, the man I talked about before, had met some diplomats. They have a battle with the natives right at the Grijalva River. I put a drone shot up. It's actually in my Spanish First Aztec video. If you can find it, I don't know if I have it time-stamped or not.
Can we also pull up a map, by the way, just so I can get my bearings here?
And so,
but go ahead.
Immediately the cannons, the arquebusiers, which is like a gun, the crossbows. Yeah, it's right over by Veracruz and Tabasco. It's technically in Tabasco.
Where am I looking?
Southern. You might want to pull up a state map. Would be
of Mexico.
Yeah. And so immediately they kill like 6,000 natives on the beach. Or sorry, that's a different story. Like about 1,000 natives on the beach, just a complete massacre. And yeah, that purple one right there where Tabasco is, right on the border between Veracruz and Tabasco there.
Right there.
Where this is happening.
I gotcha.
And so during this time, one of the most significant things that happens is after the natives lose that first battle, some diplomats come from the local priests, as well as some like Aztec, I guess you could call them diplomats, kind of hanging out in the background, trying to gather information about what's happening there. And Hernan Cortés plays this psychological warfare on them, where he convinces them, he does this good cop, bad cop thing. He convinces them that the horses and what he called the cannons were these sentient beings, and they were the ones that were in charge, and that he would be in their favor, and he would try to help make sure that the horses and the cannons wouldn't harm them anymore as long as they cooperated. This is where a lot of people think the Spanish were embellishing, but there's multiple accounts of this happening. And so the psychological warfare starts, and the big thing that happens here is they acquire, that's a terrible way to say it, but they acquire these new wives, these native wives, and one of them is La Malinche, which is a Nahuatl girl. So a girl, I guess somebody that speaks Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language, that had been traded, I guess, down there. I don't know if it was in slavery or whatever, but down in the Maya territory. So she spoke both Nahuatl and Maya. Now I got to rewind just a little bit here.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened was Hernan Cortés and his men found these two Spaniards that had been cast away with the Maya for like almost a decade. And one of them, his last name was Aguilar, I believe it's Geronimo de Aguilar. He decides to go with them. The other guy, I can't remember his name, he had already had a family with the Maya, and he stayed back. But Aguilar goes with them, and he speaks fluent Mayan and Spanish. So this La Malinche would translate Nahuatl, the Aztec language, to Mayan. And then he would translate it from Mayan to Spanish, and it kind of opened the world. They could now do diplomacy if they had to, right? If they didn't always want to fight. There's only 500 of these Spanish conquistadors. And so they quickly decide that they were going to start marching inland, and they eventually get to Tlaxcala. I'm like fast forwarding through several of this, but at one point they experience salt deprivation or sodium deprivation.
How many men does he have at this point?
I think 500.
So he still has like 500. He hasn't lost 100.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. And it gets they lose a lot of men once the actual battle starts happening in Tenochtitlan. We'll get there. But they experience salt depletion quite a bit during all this. They're not getting a lot of sodium. And each time, there was several times that Cortés himself almost died of fever. He would get nourished back with just natives that are being nice out in the mountains of Puebla. There's actually a place called Zalta Puebla that I went and traveled to. That was one of their stops along the way, and one of the places that kind of helped them out. And eventually they get to Tlaxcala, and these Tlaxcalan people were not the Aztec. They were a completely separate nation of people.
How big the nation?
The story is that the warriors that they had was 100,000 Tlaxcalan warriors. Joined the Spanish in their fight. Otherwise, they would not have been able to do what they did.
There was a civilization of 100,000 warriors right there, not the Aztecs?
Right. And that might be discounted, but multiple people say 100,000 Tlaxcalan warriors helped the Spaniards with their march on Tenochtitlan. And so they originally fought with the Tlaxcalans. They originally had a battle with them, quickly realized that these guys that had came from who knows where, the Tlaxcalans did not know where these guys were coming from, were really interested in Montezuma, their enemy. And so the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they end up allying with them. And I told you about the massacre at Cholula. That was the next stop. They stop at Cholula, and that's where the big massacre happens then. And meanwhile, Cortés is sending communications to Montezuma. They're actually speaking at this point between diplomats. And he's kind of playing this game where he's pretending like, oh, my Lord Montezuma, we are on your side. We're here to tell you about our king and our God, but otherwise, we're not here to disturb you. And Montezuma, as the story goes with the Spanish, supposedly was really terrified about what was happening due to the prophecy that the Aztec believed in, which was the return of Quetzalcoatl. Now, this is where a lot of people say the Spanish were embellishing, but the story goes that the Aztec were expecting something to happen that year from 1519 through 1521, that Quetzalcoatl was going to return, and this was going to be the end of Montezuma's reign. And so a lot of people thought that Hernan Cortés, or I guess Montezuma in particularly, supposedly thought that Hernan Cortés was Quetzalcoatl. And so if that is true, he basically believes that prophecy is taking place. And so, do we attack them? He didn't know what to do is the story there. Eventually, they get to Tenochtitlan, and they're welcomed there. They stay there for quite a while, and they're just amazed. Some of the quotes from like Bernal Diaz is that this is the most beautiful city we've ever seen in our lives. That they couldn't believe that the sites that they were seeing, the buildings, the architecture, the markets, they were very impressed with the markets.
What was so impressive about the markets?
How organized everything was. And also I think they were a little shocked at what was being sold at the markets.
Like what?
Like humans.
Humans,
according to them, that these markets were being sold. In Cholula, they write about how there were children being fattened up in cages at some of the markets.
To be sold
as
in slavery,
to be sold as a sacrifice, and then eventually as a commodity, like a food to be eaten. And so,
wait. So you're saying the Aztecs were cannibals?
The Conquistadors document cannibalism throughout even Tlaxcala and Cholula and the Aztec extensively.
Can we take a sidebar on that real quick?
And there's pretty good archaeological evidence to support a lot of that.
So what were some of the, besides the markets in Tenochtitlan where they're fattening up children in cages to be sold as sacrifices or to be eaten, what other places were they seeing this as a commonality? And were they foreigners always? Meaning like...
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think a lot of these are captives. So yeah, I do need to back up quite a bit. Kind of started just go. So if we go all the way back to before they even went to Cholula, before they even allied with the Tlaxcalans, they allied with these people called the Simpoalans out on the Veracruz coast. And their main grievance was that these Aztec tax collectors came and took some of their children and their wives and their kids as basically a tax. And so there's a reason why a lot of these people are allying with the conquistadors. They are tired of this tax that they're paying, which is their human lives that are being sacrificed to their gods. And so that's kind of a little bit more context there. Now, those markets, they describe them as well organized. At one point, they realized that this was kind of interesting. They would sell these boatloads worth of human fecal matter, and they would use that. They would collect it. They had like all these different public restrooms that people would go do their business, and they would collect that, and they would extract salt from that, was the story. And once again, shout out to Kevin Siepel, his book, Conquistador Voyages.
Salt?
Yeah, salt. Because all that's coming out, and so apparently you can extract minerals, salt, all kinds of stuff if you get rid of, I don't know the process they used for it. So that's in the video.
That's a South Park episode.
Yeah, for sure. But eventually they meet Montezuma. They tell him that like, we're here to introduce you to our Lord. We are the servants of King Charles, as well as, our Lord Jesus Christ. And they try to get him to stop these human sacrifices. And eventually they take him captive. And it's kind of quiet the way they take him captive. But meanwhile, Hernan Cortés, kind of all over the place here, but this story is kind of all over the place. You keep in mind, he's a wanted fugitive by the people back in Cuba. And a whole garrison arrives on the coast to arrest him. And this is right after he gets to Tenochtitlan and they're in the actual city.
Which people in Cuba?
The Spaniards, like okay. the people that, the governor at one point basically said, no, you can't go. And he took off with all of his ships and men. And now he's trying to conquer Mexico. And Cortés is writing to the king this entire time, trying to bypass this Cuban governor, knowing that he has to conquer Mexico at this point and make it in a way that would be favorable to the king, right? Get that royal fifth. Let him know how big of a discovery this is, or they've found an entire civilization. And so Cortés gets word that this fleet has arrived to arrest him and even kill him, basically dead or alive. And so he has to go back to the coast and take care of this. And he does. He goes and they have a quick skirmish on the coast. and basically tells these guys what he's discovered. And now he has reinforcements. He has a lot more people that
they join him.
They join him because he's like, guys, like first it was a skirmish. Like he had a little bit of a battle. He attacked them kind of in a surprise. It was a surprise attack, but then let them know what they were dealing with here. An entire civilization with lots of gold. These guys had gold lust.
How do we know it was a surprise attack? Primary sources?
Cortés and Bernal Diaz's letters.
So how did he do it?
I believe it was at night.
Oh,
I believe it was at night. And the commander, I know that the guy that was in charge of trying to take Cortés into custody was like the last one to surrender, and he ended up losing his eye. I don't know but he lost an eye in the battle. And so they go back to Tenochtitlan and find out that all hell is broken loose. The conquistadors that were there, that were left, started to become really paranoid. Their welcome was no longer, the welcome was worn thin. And at some point, there was a festival, and these conquistadors, they mistaked this festival for, they thought that they were planning on massacring them. So the conquistadors did like a preemptive strike and killed hundreds, if not thousands of people in the middle of Tenochtitlan. And Cortés comes back to all of this. And, basically at this point, it's all out warfare. They somehow get into the middle of, I guess you got to keep in mind, these guys have shields. These guys have, advanced weapons. They get back into the center of Tenochtitlan. Cortés is furious that they allowed this to happen. Like, why did you guys attack them? Like, we had this. We had we had Montezuma on our side, and now it appears, I think, that the conquistadors likely killed him. The story is that he was killed by his own people because the people were starting to rebel, and that he went out to like calm them down, and a rock was thrown and it hit him in the head. But a lot of people think it was probably the conquistadors decided that he was no longer useful to them alive. And
what a crazy story.
It's a crazy story. So they decide they need to make their escape. Meanwhile, during this entire time, the conquistadors had been building brigantines to try to sail on, because remember, Tenochtitlan, if you pull up a picture of this, it's in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Mm-hmm. And the only way in and out are these causeways, and the Aztec are the ones that control these causeways. And at some point they decide that they're going to escape. And this is like the part that's really crazy, where half the conquistadors end up dying. They try to escape on these causeways. Yeah, here's some pictures.
The map of Tenochtitlan always fucking blows my mind.
I know, it's
like
crazy.
It's a mini Atlantean looking fucking thing,
right? Yeah, it's insane. It's out in the middle of this lake, and those causeways, you see those little yellow bridges there. They try to sneak across, but before they know it, everybody sees what's happening, and basically a massacre happens. Half the conquistadors get caught by the Aztec, and Hernan Cortés and several, the rest get out of there. And the story is that they watched from a distance and heard from a distance their brothers in arms being sacrificed alive.
Sacrificed alive.
So
they're captured, and then what would they? Where are they sacrificing them on?
Templo Mayor in the center.
What is that when they're sacrificing them alive? What does that consist of?
This is probably Luke Cavern's territory a little bit better, but an obsidian blade and probably some type of ritual. I don't know, but the story, this is called La Noche Triste. If you pull up La Noche Triste, which is the sad night, read some of the details on this, because it's a crazy story. They think it could have been tens to hundreds of them sacrificed that night, and then many more killed. So,
what a fucking horrible way to go. All right, so the sad night, the night of sorrows, called Victorious Night by some sectors in Mexico. It's the name of the defeat suffered by the Spanish troops of Hernan Cortés at the hands of the Mexica army on the night of June 30th or July 1st, 1520. The last day of the month, I'm not even going to try to say that word, something, on the outskirts of Tenochtitlan in Tacuba under a leafy ajohuerte tree in what is now Mexico City. On November 8th, 1519, Hernan Cortés and his army entered Mexico Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. Emperor Montezuma II, surrounded by Aztec nobility, awaited him. Cortés dismounted to embrace the Aztec ruler, but Cacamatzin, lord of Texcoco, and Qualahac, lord of Iztapalapa, prevented him as the Aztec sovereign was considered untouchable. Cortés removed a necklace of margaritas, glass beads, and placed it around Montezuma.
And so this is, not to interrupt you, but this is kind of the beginning story I was telling.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You go all the way down to
the massacre at Templo Mayor.
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
Yeah.
So when Cortés had to leave to confront Pontillo de Narvaez' expedition, he left. What was that again?
Yeah, so this is when he goes to basically take care of the Spaniards that are on Cuba. The coast. Yeah, that are trying to get him. And this massacre right here happens while he's away. So if you scroll down a little bit more to actually La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. This is the one.
So the fighting between the Mexican and the Spanish had already lasted a week. The Spanish and their indigenous allies were besieged in and around the palace of Aixcatl, almost without food, so they decided to flee at midnight on June 30th, 1520. Cortés gave the signal to leave, and under orders of silence, they marched stealthily across a bridge of canoes toward Tlacopan, careful to avoid the whinnying of their horses. Imagine them just like, shut the fuck up, horse. Yeah. All right, so upon reaching the Toltec Canal, an elderly Mexico woman who had come out to fetch water from a jug noticed the Spanish escape and alerted the Aztec warriors. Soon the serpent skin drum from the temple began to sound, and the Spanish found themselves surrounded by thousands of enraged warriors. Within minutes, the lagoon surrounding Mexico Tenochtitlan was teeming with canoes full of natives armed in spears and arrows, while the rooftops, thousands of warriors attacked the rear guard and other natives cut the bridges to the mainland, which was made of canoes tied together. It is said that the soldiers who chose to rid themselves of their jewels and gold survived, while many of those burdened by steel armor, gold bars, and jewels died rich. But there is also an element of legend here. In a night battle on a narrow causeway built over water, attacked by thousands of enemies simultaneously from both flanks and the rear, salvation could only have come from courage or luck. Alvarado himself was saved by Martin de Gamboa, who lifted him onto the back of a horse and later declared that Alvarado wore only a cotton armor of Mexica design and his Toledo sword at his belt. Men and horses drowned in the ditches and pools. Artillery was lost. Cortés's indigenous allies were massacred. The term is accurate. Of more than 1,000 Tenochtitlan allies, barely 100 survived, and half of the Spanish troops were killed, with almost the rest wounded. So during the ceremonies for the ascension of the new emperor, captured Spaniards and Tenochtitlans were sacrificed. It was claimed that 90% of the loot from Montezuma's treasure was lost.
Yeah, at the bottom of Lake Texcoco. The idea that they drowned because they didn't want to empty their pockets. You see that tree right there? The legend is that Hernan Cortés wept at that tree as they listened to what happened to the people that were left behind. And that tree's still there.
And what did he do about it?
Well, so they then go back to Tlaxcala with what's left of their allies, and they regroup.
They get a lot more warriors.
And then more Spaniards come, and then they go back and do the final siege of Tenochtitlan, which is another battle that even more conquistadors died. Hundreds of thousands of Aztec die from not only the war, but from disease. They cut off the causeway or the waterway of Chapultepec, which was where all the fresh water came in from the city, and basically starved them out. At this point, a huge wave, like right before, a huge wave of smallpox comes in and just takes care of a lot of the dirty work for the conquistadors. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so at that point, there's huge bombardment of the city. And what's left of the new, there's I can't remember his name, but there was a new king, an Aztec king, that ended up surrendering to Cortés when they caught him. And at first they spared him, but the story is that when they got frustrated because there was hardly any gold to be found, because a lot of this they boiled his feet in oil, torturing him, trying to get out, where's the gold? We know there's more gold. And they never got it.
Feet in oil?
Yep, that's the story. They boiled his feet in oil. And so a lot of people were very frustrated with Hernan Cortés at this point. All these soldiers that had risked their lives, many of them wounded, many of them had their brothers and friends killed. There's not a lot of spoils to be divvied out among the men. A lot of people thought Hernan Cortés actually hid the gold, that he took some of the gold and put it elsewhere. And so it's a crazy story. And it's the first one I did for a while. It's the first Conquistador video I did when I did this whole series. So it's been a while, but they got to make a movie.
They have to make a movie.
It's wild.
What became of Hernan Cortés after this?
So Hernan Cortés goes back to Spain to basically try to justify what he did. At this point, there's a Council of the Indies, and
a Council of the Indies.
Yeah, so the Council of the New World, I guess we'll call it at that point,
who are based in the New World
in Seville, Spain.
Oh, so they're back home.
Yeah, so he's going back to court and kind of explaining the massacre at Cholula. A lot of the massacres that happened at Templo Mayor. Explaining himself for betraying the Cuban governor in the first place. Cortés was a bit of a pirate. Like he had to go clear his name. And he ends up having a child with La Malinche, one of the first mestizo children in the New World. So La Malinche was the interpreter that they had, acquired, I guess, or got in Tabasco. And he settles down in Spain for a while. And I believe, maybe look this up, Joey, I want to say he ends up being buried in Mexico, but maybe Mexico recently decided they didn't want his body in Mexico. I can't remember where his body lies today. Let's see here. So Hernan Cortés, Spanish conquistador of the empire, is buried in Mexico City. So he's still in Mexico City. So his body's actually in Mexico City. Yeah. But yeah, he has a child with La Malinche and dies a very rich man. He did one more expedition he did several other things, but one more expedition out in Baja, California at one point.
Baja, California.
Yeah. And
why there?
That was just another frontier that hadn't been explored.
Can we pull up the map, California?
He becomes pretty instrumental in the building and development of Mexico City after his name is cleared. So, he kind of starts the new empire of New Spain in many ways.
Can we trace his family tree back? Does he have living relatives?
I had a guy message me that said a lot of his relatives ended up being Tejanos in Texas. That a lot of Cortez's bloodline ended up near like the San Antonio in southern Texas. So I'm sure there are people out there that know about that. I'm sure that's something you could trace. Yeah,
got that Cortés blood in him.
Yeah,
it's an insane. We got to get that author in here. I love I don't love all the outcomes, obviously, but like the history there and the story of that conquest and the ultimate, political tete-a-tete that goes south, and one side decides to massacre and then the other side says, all right, we'll raise you times 10 and also give you smallpox.
Yeah. And the fact that they didn't even know about each other until 2 years prior to the complete fall of this civilization. Usually two enemies know about each other for quite a bit of time before, shit hits the fan. This was all just like sudden Armageddon in many ways for the Aztec.
I would love, you talk about a movie, I would love to see a Narcos style show done where every season is 10 episodes of a different conquistador.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
And you give it its full ability to breathe. And some of them might need to be 2-3 seasons.
Yeah.
If you're doing 20, 30 episodes to really tell the story, where you stay as historically accurate as possible. And then, you also work in some Hollywood stuff to make it entertaining, or get some plot points. But that would be so fucking cool. And I think we've seen this, looking at it historically, people have a real desire for that, whether you look at something fictionalized like Game of Thrones and how popular that got from a medieval perspective as far as like the type of setting, and then you look at something historical like The Crown and what an amazing show that was across different generations of like Queen Elizabeth's life, and people really mopped up the history there, and like that I think there would be a huge opportunity. I agree with you.
Yeah, and Hernan Cortés and his story would be, like, in my opinion, the best episode.
Who plays Hernan Cortés?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Well, it's got to be, let's see, like...
how old was he when he met with Montezuma? Do we know?
In his 30s. I want to say mid-30s. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm 36 now.
Can Jacob Elordi speak fucking Spanish?
So he was born in 1485, and 1519 is when they first arrive. So what's the math on that? 34 when he first gets there, and then by the time he sacks Tenochtitlán, he's 36.
Hey, he's got a little bit of that like Al Pacino in The Merchant of Venice look to him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he almost died like 3 times. In fact, I just really, I'm sorry, my brain was getting a little wild there. I need some more of this caffeine. I skipped a whole part of it. There's
let's
story.
Go back. You have room to rewind.
There's a story of the first time they actually Spaniards set eyes on Tenochtitlán. There's this volcano. If you want to pull this up, it's called Papo. If you pull up the volcano Papo and
Papo,
P-O-P-O, and it's a Nahuatl word, but for short it's Papo.
The Popo.
It's this beautiful volcano in Puebla. And after they do the Cholula massacre, they need some more gunpowder, right? And so you have basically everything you need in a volcano. They have the what do you call it? The smells like rotten eggs. The
phosphorus,
some type of phosphorus or something like that with the volcano.
That's probably not right.
I don't think that is right.
Out there, sorry.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. But one of the ingredients for gunpowder for their cannons was in that volcano, and so he sends some men up to go with their native guides to go climb this very active volcano that's still active today. And sulfur.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my brain was a little foggy. So sulfur, and they climb this volcano to the very peak, which is just crazy. Like, this is a very active volcano, even to this day, and that's when they see Tenochtitlán for the first time
from the volcano.
That's the story. Now, whether you could or not, some people argue that you couldn't, and I get a lot of crap online because I say that this was Hernan Cortés's first time seeing the volcano and that he was just amazed by it. And a lot of people say, well, they have volcanoes in Italy. This couldn't have been his first time seeing a volcano. But Hernan Cortés went to the New World at a very early age. So for many of them, this was their first time as they were going by it, seeing an active volcano. And they were pretty amazed by it. Yeah, absolutely. Now, he didn't climb it. He sent some guys up there.
Of course he did.
Right. He's the boss.
He ain't taking that risk.
But they climbed this volcano supposedly to go get some sulfur for their
gunpowder. It's a steep-ass climb, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, volcanoes are crazy looking.
I drove up Cortez's Pass. I did a road trip. I drove my car from Kansas to Oaxaca, and I stopped in Puebla and drove up Cortez's Pass up this near this volcano, and I got a pretty sick drone shot of it. I wish I would have brought it for you. But that pass is the pass that they use to get to Tenochtitlán, one of them. So, yeah.
Now you were telling me off camera, you went to college with a focus in history.
Yeah.
And then you were a history teacher in high school, teaching pretty much everything.
Yeah,
for
I went
years.
to college for teaching history, secondary education.
That's awesome.
I taught for 8 years.
What eras did you teach to your students?
Everything. When you're teaching at small schools, you are the history department when you get hired. So I was teaching like 6th graders through like 12th grade AP American history. So I'd be teaching middle school geography, and then next hour I might be teaching AP American history or
cool.
AP, world history.
What is your favorite history of all to study?
By far,
era.
New Spain. That first contact through the rise and fall of New Spain. That's my favorite one right now.
The kids would be really interested in that too.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
good.
as long as you don't censor yourself too much. Talk about the tragedy, talk about the gore, talk about the nastiness of, the wild, both the good and the bad of history. Right. Be real. Be as real as you can without being, you got to pick your battles. Parents get a little mad sometimes, but
did you run into that a lot?
Not
where
necessarily.
The school was pressuring you to not say things?
No, I'm from an area that has pretty thick skin. Like things can fly where I'm from.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure.
That.
Yeah.
That's one thing I just kind of thinking about the eras of my life. I got really lucky because I just missed that era of where they would have been like, we need to edit this and make it more digestible. Like my history teachers throughout my life were fucking awesome. Yeah. They just taught it. You know?
An era of history that I'm super interested in but don't know a lot about right now is the Crusades. I feel like I need to do a prequel to all this with the Crusades because it all ties into why people even went to the Americas in the first place. So that might be a project once I finish this Conquistador series. I got a couple more episodes with the Conquistadors that I want to do.
Crusades is nuts.
Crusades is wild.
You ever seen the director's extended cut of Kingdom of Heaven?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so they made Ridley cut that movie down, and it was poorly received because it cut around. But I think he released. We can check this, Steve. I think he released multiple director's cuts, and they each got longer. But the full director's cut is actually an amazing movie. But that's another one. It's almost like, and I was just talking with another guy I'm going to have on the podcast about this. It's almost like we get so fascinated with ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome, which let's call that dwindle it down to a couple thousand years.
Old world ancient history.
Right. And then once Rome falls for the first time, 476, there's like a of just like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and roughly that happened. Don't worry about that right there. And then we kind of get to like 1700 North America and Europe, focusing on those two different like areas and what was happening in the world. And there is so fucking much in there that we ignore, and of course lessons to be learned from the different ruling classes of those times. Yeah,
and it's like the Roman Empire, Egypt on YouTube is pretty well covered. Mm-hmm. And so I thought about doing some content on Egypt because I am interested in it. I made one video on Herodotus, which was the Greek traveler that went there and documented what he saw and what he learned. And I quickly realized, it was cool, but I want to do the Americas. Yes. The Americas are so interesting because even before Columbus arrived, so interesting because it's one big mystery. We know quite a bit. We have really good archaeologists that have done a lot of great work on the Americas, and there's really good oral histories from the natives that are still here that have documented a lot of their customs. But there still is there's beyond the Maya and the Aztec, when you go up to North America, there's not any writing that we have to see. So a lot of it's coming from oral traditions, from the descendants that are still there. And so there's a lot of mythology, there's a lot of lore in the Americas that's still there, and a lot of mysteries, a lot of enigmas that are still hard to explain with the Americas. Ain't it crazy we don't think about the feet below us right here on the ground? Right. And what... Exactly. We live in this European history world because that's who charted it. But what about all the shit that didn't get charted before they found it? Yeah, exactly. Manhattan was probably prime real estate to the natives. Of course. It's a great spot. Incredible. Me and Luke talk about that quite a bit. Luke Havern's anytime you're looking at a beautiful spot somewhere, you know, out in nature somewhere, or maybe a good spot on the river, there's a good chance that somebody else thought that was a good spot too.
Yes.
You might find an arrowhead there. You might find something there, you know?
Yeah, like even like more recent stuff that you should care about a lot. New York was a ground zero spot, no pun intended on that, with the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And like and I'm always thinking about that walking along the Hudson when I take my walks there and like, oh my God, they went from there to there and right there to Staten Island. Oh my God, that's where Washington escaped. And then he escaped up here. And by the way, West Point's an hour away. It's like, holy shit, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing.
I grew up on the Arkansas River. And, you know, I think even further back, like 12,000 years, when the hunter-gatherers were just slaughtering big mega fauna out there. You know, they found there's so many mammoth tusks just out there in like western Kansas, eastern Colorado that, you know, you could uncover, or probably were uncovered when agriculture came through. And you're just sitting out here driving on this Highway 50 on this road. It's pretty desolate. And you just think back like, 200 years ago, the grizzly bear was out here. We don't have grizzly bears in Kansas anymore. Like grizzly bears are pretty isolated.
No grizzlies in Kansas?
No, grizzlies aren't even in Colorado, supposedly, anymore, or New Mexico. The grizzlies used to be all upon the high plains. Yeah. And they're now up in Wyoming and Montana and Idaho, and Washington, I guess, brown bears, grizzlies. So I think about the different animals. I know that Luke, I hope I'm not spoiling this, Luke. Luke's really interested in how far the jaguar came into the Americas. And, you know, there's a traditional territory map that he thinks maybe it should be a little bigger because of some of the artifacts that you find even out in like the mound builder cultures. I won't say anymore because I want Luke to cook on that. But
fucking old Indiana Jones on it again.
You're going to have to get him back on, brother, because he's got a lot to say about the jaguar. So I think about all that for sure. The Americas are still a big mystery, and they're going to be a mystery with respect to like archaeologists who have done amazing work and who have told us a lot. There's just a lot we don't know, right? I know that's a cliche thing to say, but it's true.
Oh, it's especially with North America.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep.
And speaking of that, we got to talk about that
Huaytlaco. Yeah, for sure.
So we're gonna get there, and then you just did this whole investigation on the Nazca mummies, and you were also interviewed by my buddy Jesse Michaels, who had done his own investigation on it to kind of give the counterpoint, because you've gone and observed this stuff and uncovered a lot of problems with that story, and I can talk about some things I've seen behind the scenes that I have problems with on that. So I want to break all that down. We've got to talk about the Mayans as well. I got to take a piss. We've been talking for like 2 hours, 45 minutes. Cool. So this is going to be episode 2. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and subscribe to Will's page. It's amazing stuff. You will love it. I'll see you for the next episode. Peace. What's up, guys? Thanks so much for watching the video. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button before you leave, as well as leaving a like on the video. It's a huge help. You can join my Patreon via the link in the description, and you can also join my clipping community via the Discord link down below. See you for the next episode.